Yeah. I think it's on.
It's on?
Is it?
It was before. It was working
Yeah,
before.
I just just talk into it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
yeah.
Yep,
Oh, okay.
it's better.
Okay.
I'll shut this door as well.
Check for other batteries.
So the position of manager of Bethesda Post Office is my position. I was promoted in December of 2012. So I've been there quite a lengthy time. I've probably heard concerns from 2815 for that length of time.
Can you hear him?
No.
No, you're gonna have to stand and address them
Okay.
more loudly.
So,
You have a soft voice.
okay, I mean, I need
He carries a big stick.
And carry, yeah,
So anyway, I guess to make a long story short, I have actually been away since May of 2014, and I came back October 26th. So it appears to me that a lot had not changed over that period of time. But one of the things I do want to interject is we have hired over 34 city carrier assistants to fill the gaps for the vacant assignments. Now, some of you have become accustomed to having a regular carrier, someone who you knew by name or know by name, and they, because of their experience and years in the service, they've opted on what we consider easier assignments based on their seniority. So, the more difficult assignments, the city carrier assistants who are actually a fill the gap employee for a regular carrier. So you're seeing right now an influx of carriers who've retired or requested easier assignments. And now what we consider a difficult assignment for a letter carrier is, in fact, having to walk from house to house to deliver mail. So now they're down here for a box, up here for a box, and so we consider that a difficult assignment, steps and so forth and so on. The problem that we're having right now is to vet a letter carrier, to make him or her be the person that you look forward to seeing every day with a smile, with the right mail. It takes
with dog biscuits.
right, and it takes a while. And I can tell you, we hired 34 city assistants. We have 19 now. There's a 30-day evaluation. There's a 60-day evaluation. And there's a 90. I don't say it's like Navy SEAL stuff, but a lot of them are ringing the bell, and a lot of them we have to let go because they just don't have the skills. And you're saying, well, I can show you a book of postal acronyms. I can talk about DPS, FSS, and a whole list of other things that when a person walks through the door, they have to get acclimated to postal terms and culture. So, with that being said, we have also rented rider trucks. We have some vans that we've rented that I'd like to take a couple of them home. And we did that to make sure that we had enough vehicles for the holiday season in order to deliver Amazon packages. The packages are, can I say, off the chart. I mean, you folks buy a lot of packages. I mean, you buy a lot of stuff from Amazon. A lot of stuff from Amazon.
you're speaking of 20815,
Correct.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Correct, yes.
not Arthur.
2815. Yes. So, the dilemma is getting people acclimated to the postal culture, getting them to understand the terms. Now, misdelivery is another issue because everyone that we hire can read. And that is one of the larger frustrations that I have, is that you give me someone else's mail, where's mine? And that's part of the reason why a lot of folks are washing out.
Hmm.
And I know we do put stringent expectations on the letter carriers, but here's the thing for me. Your 20-year, your 15-year carrier got it. They've been doing it for 30 years, and they got it, and you look forward to seeing them. And so we do have a process of weeding out the folks that are creating these problems of leaving a parcel at the door and it's raining. I mean, some of this stuff is kind of common sense stuff, and that's the part that we have to eliminate. If you can't figure out the common sense stuff, then I can't get you to do the scanning, not walk across the grass if I put a sign up, or I tell you not to walk across the grass, trample on the flowers, during the summer. So there's a lot going on there, and I'm not making excuses, but you have to find the right fit. And we're like any other company, we have to go through those growing pains because we have people who are retiring. They've been around a long time. So I want you to bear with me, but we do expect an improvement over time. We do, and I've been here since 2012. You've probably heard this before. But we're allowed to hire more people than we were previously, and a lot of it just has to do with the parcel traffic. Amazon is big for us. We don't want to lose them, and we don't want to lose you. We can't make it without you.
Mm.
So, yes.
Come in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So with that being said, that's pretty much an overview. Now, our intent is to have mail by 5 o'clock, and we want everybody to have their mail about the same time every day. And she's already shaking her head. Well, we've been hearing that for a while. But we've been given the ability to hire as many people as we need in this area to make that work. And I think in about a week or so, well, less than a week, we're going to have carriers hitting the pavement at 6 a.m. to come out and deliver the enormous amount of parcels that folks are buying in this area. So we're going to have parcel delivery, no mail delivery on Thanksgiving. And Friday is Black Friday, and we know about the shopping, the internet shopping. So we anticipate being able to get those packages out to you timely on Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving.
Okay, one of the areas that I've gotten a lot of concern is that people who stop their mail while they're away on vacation, and that the mail keeps being delivered, and then when they finally get it stopped, then it never is delivered. When they come back, they call and say, can we have our mail? Is there some secret to making that work?
Well, no, the system is the same across the country. That is one of those factors that it may be that those folks that are put on an assignment for a couple days or for a week, and then next week I've got a different person on assignment, and they're not checking the holds. The cards are there available, and it's just an oversight in some instances by a person who hasn't been through the whole vetting period or been there long enough to get a clear understanding of what is expected. And a lot of that falls in management's hands as not giving that training. Now, I can tell you that I've given a few people my BlackBerry number, and a few people, but here's the thing, if it gets to be critical or to the extent that it's ongoing, I have given my number out to a few people, but I can't be on the BlackBerry with every customer. But I have actually in 2815, given several people, more than several,
Right.
my cell phone number to call me, and you don't know who that person is, so I can't say call that person.
Right.
But here's the thing, I'm trying to give you an avenue so that I can address things immediately, sooner than later. Because if you allow it to go on for an extended period of time and I don't hear about it, I'm thinking everything's just fine. So, again, I do want to leave my name and my phone number, and then, Richard, you'll get the special number. And that way, I've just given him a lot of work, and I hope I'm not. But the fact of the matter is that unless I hear from you or someone,
No.
I'm under the impression that
Right.
everything's okay.
So there, I'm sure some of our residents have questions.
Sure.
If you just stand up and identify yourself, please. Chris.
Chris Cole, Shepherd Street. Is there gonna be any effort made, in terms of training these new people, to also have the delivery at roughly the same time every day? Because, another of the issues that I think many of us have had is delivery can be anywhere from 9 a.m. to, say, 8:45 or 9 p.m. at night.
Right.
And for those of us who have dogs that aren't fond of the Postal Service and have to confine them for a certain period of time and in a certain place, it's kind of hard to know how to deal with that when you never know if you go to your front door at 9 o'clock at night, there's the letter carrier.
So one of the things that we've been tasked with is having the routes inspected again in order to include the large parcel volume. In other words, the routes were actually walked with to determine the length when the parcel volume wasn't nearly what it is now. So what we're looking at, a letter carrier, if he has to leave his truck and walk to the door, he gets 3 minutes for each parcel. So they're walking out the door with about 70 or 80 parcels, and about 40 of them won't fit in the box. So he or she has to go to the door. So normally when they left out with 25 to 30 parcels, we had expectations of them returning by a certain time, and darkness is an issue. So we're going through that process of actually walking the routes with a large volume of parcels to determine that it's no way possible that this person can get to you or get finished with their delivery at a recent hour and nowhere near our expectations.
Are you using parcels and delivering letters interchangeably, or is this two separate services?
No, it's the same service.
Okay.
But what has happened is the letter and flat volume has diminished, but I still gotta come to you, because you're
Right.
ordering a
Right.
lot of
Stuff from
items.
Amazon, yeah.
So with that being said, that's our goal, to right size the route so you can expect to go out to your mailbox at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon based on taking some deliveries off of that person because the parcels are holding them out on the street longer.
Okay, other
Sounds
questions?
as though,
I'm
if I
sorry.
could just follow up, it sounds as though the Postal Service's mission, though, has changed quite dramatically, given that it's more oriented now towards parcel delivery as opposed to mail. And that suggests to me that, and this is, probably not for you, but way up in upper management, and I'm wondering whether or not there's been any attention paid to this and just restructuring the whole concept of how our mail is delivered to account for that sort of qualitative difference in the type of mail, so that, maybe parcels are delivered by one unit within the service and the flat mail by another unit.
I think from what I understand, is that we're attempting to hire the city carrier assistant to come in break of dawn and take from the regular letter carrier the parcels that would extend his day. So that's a portion of it. The large parcels, we're looking for an assistant to come in and take the large parcels from him and deliver those, so that would shorten his day. That's our attempt right now. I can't tell you long-term, but
Right.
I can tell you Amazon is actually helping us to stay out of the red. So we can't turn our back on it. So we can't turn, and you know, Walmart is getting ready to jump in the game too.
Right.
So, yes.
There's a woman in the back with a question.
Yeah, Holly Shadler. It's not so much as a question as how to, well, I guess it is how to deal with this. I have noticed just over the last year or so, the person who's delivering our mail is walking through the gardens, between the houses, and I can certainly understand that that's an efficient way to get through, but it really does a number on our gardens. And so I thought, well, I'll just ask the person to walk out on the pavement. I assume they're instructed to walk on the pavement as opposed to through a bunch of bushes and that
Okay.
sort of thing. And but then the people change so much. Every time I talk to them, they said, yeah, but we don't come here often. So is there something that could be done to reinforce?
Well, what we
Or am I
can do is, we have a card that we've developed, well, not developed, it's just a card, and you write on it, at this particular address, do not walk across the yard. And you stick it in the little hole there, and when the person, whomever it is, if you're casing the mail, you pull the card out and it says, do not walk in yard.
Oh, okay.
You can do that.
Okay.
But if we don't have that, the person's gonna take the most efficient and shortest distance from one delivery to the other. But as a customer, we're to follow your instructions because it's your yard. And then if you do get someone different, that's exactly what's happening. Your 20-year letter carrier already knows that Miss Marshall or Miss Johnson can't walk across the grass, or don't walk through the flower bed. And I'm just trying to figure out, why would you walk through a flower bed anyway?
Well, I'm not talking about grass. I'm fine with someone walking.
Right.
Sure,
It's the bushes.
Right.
that-
bushes, okay.
Yeah.
There was another question, but who, yes,
That's Marshall Robert Pepper. Over the last maybe 6 months, the missed deliveries. Right. I'm getting somebody else's mail, they're getting mine. Some days, we had a situation where the carrier put our neighbor's mail through our slot. We weren't there, but then our neighbor noticed they were ringing the bell, and then they just got in their truck and drove away. They didn't deliver anybody else's mail on the block. So, yeah, how do we let you know when those things happen? Because that's obviously
Right.
not in your interest either.
Well, there's a 1-800 number that you can call, and also the ECC cases. The ECC cases are generated,
what are ECC cases?
it's actually a customer, it's actually a customer's
Complaint line?
complaint, right, yeah. And that actually goes right to the delivery unit, and I actually get to see those too. And some of them get escalated if we don't respond in a timely fashion. So we're supposed to respond to your concerns within 24 hours. If you actually go online and lodge a complaint, because at USPS.com, there should be a link there where you can lodge a complaint. But here's the thing, 34 started, we have 19. One of those people may have been one of the folks that was misdelivering your mail, and they're not with us. I can't say that for a fact, but it could have been one of them.
I don't think it's been a single incident, by the way. I mean, I think
Right.
that the letter, or at least the emails I've been getting, would indicate that it's a fairly common problem. Naomi had a question too, I'm sorry.
Yeah, my name is Naomi Nyerman. I'm on Quincy Street. Quincy is a hill, And one of the days that I was out for a walk, there was a young woman who was huffing and puffing and said, I can't do this hill. So, and she was relatively heavy, and I'm wondering to what extent, aside from literacy, you also have a criteria that has to do with physical ability to handle the territory. That's one, and then the other related issue is that I've had deliveries halfway up the steps versus on the platform. That's not good for rain, it's not good customer service. So I wonder to what extent you train people to bring it all the way up to the door, et cetera.
A delivery is not really completed until it's in a receptacle. So,
Well, if there is no, if it's a box,
a box.
so on the top of the stairs rather than halfway up the stairs.
Okay, so if I understand you to say that you don't have a mail receptacle, that
Well,
you
on a
have.
bench, which where most of the time the boxes are left on, but
Well,
very often it's only halfway up the stairs.
well, see, I can't really speak to that because the requirement is that you have a mail receptacle.
A
Now,
large
I'm
box?
talking about either in the door or on the wall or on the street. Now, if they have been delivering mail for years to that address for you and you have something at the top of the steps and that's what's been used, then that would be the expectation of the carrier,
I'm
yes.
sorry, can I clarify with you? It's a box, it's a large box.
And you have a mail slot for your,
Boxes are being delivered.
I misunderstood you.
Right.
I thought you said at the top of the steps, you had a box that they put your mail in.
No.
Oh, I
They
apologize.
brought the box, the parcel,
Yes,
a large
parcel,
parcel,
yes.
only halfway up the stairs,
Sure.
as opposed to all the way up the stairs.
Yes, they should, and there's no rhyme or reason why they shouldn't. That's just bad service. The other part is, I actually, I'm one of the interviewees for orientation for newly hired employees. They always suggest that you start walking your block. You walk about 5 to 6 miles a day. So after you come to orientation, if you are not accustomed to walking a lot, I'm just saying walking a lot, we don't tell people because you're big, you're supposed to walk a lot. You can't do that. So we tell everyone, if you're not accustomed to walking at least 5 miles a day, then you need to start walking 5 miles a day before you even take the job, because you're gonna wind up, your ankle's gonna swell up, everything's gonna really go crazy. Most of the folks, when they first start out, if they're larger individuals, they lose about 20 to 50 pounds. And they're really excited about it. But here's the thing, we do encourage them to walk
right.
a lot before they take the job.
We can take a couple of more questions, because we have a big meeting tonight. Lynn?
Yes, sir.
Lynn Valley, Oxford Street. I get the impression that you're going through a period of transition.
Yes, sir.
And I was wondering when this began and what optimistic expectation there might be as to when things get settled down so that there's some stability as opposed to this very upset period of time we've been going through.
Sure. We have been tasked by our district manager. He has said, if you need vehicles, we'll get you vehicles. If you need people, we'll get you people. So we're going through the process where we were not allowed, or the cap on hiring the ceiling had been reached. And now, in order to deal with our situation here in Bethesda, we're allowed to use whatever resources necessary. Now, again, as I said earlier, it's the vetting process. Everybody's not gonna make it. So we don't know. I can't give you a timetable on exactly when we'll have folks vetted, when we're constantly bringing people in to fill the gap. But I can tell you that I am, and the postmaster and everyone over there who's in management has been given stiff warnings about the outcome and what may or may not happen if the outcome doesn't change. And that's purely a postal issue, but I can tell you that my seat is hot. I started at 7. I started at 7 a.m. this morning.
Steve Steve had a
Can I
question.
add another thing, please?
Yes.
Lynn, we have to let Steve ask a question because we're running out of time. You can meet with him here after the meeting, please.
Okay, Steve Schmall, Summit Avenue. And while you've explained a little bit about how one should complain, I'm a little concerned. You mentioned the 800 number. And what concerns me about that is I'm assuming this is a national number. And I wonder how that gets the complaint down to the level where it really can be addressed, which is at your level. You also mentioned another system.
Yes.
And I wonder, what is the optimum way for us to do it that doesn't hamper your operation too badly, but gets us the information to you in the right place at the right time?
I think one of the easiest ways is to actually call the station, and when you call, ask for a particular zip code, which would be 20815. What you want to do, and a lot of times folks don't do it, is ask for the supervisor and ask for that name, so that person is tasked with resolving your issue. And if they don't resolve it, then you would probably call them again and ask for the same person. And then, if that doesn't happen, then you need to escalate it to me.
Yeah, and this is at Westlake.
That's at Westlake.
And
What's
there's a
that
number,
number?
and there's a number available for Westlake.
There's about 3 numbers.
Oh,
Did
okay.
everybody know that?
No.
Could you give us
So why
at
don't we
least one
get,
of them?
we'll get a
If
number.
you
and-
circulate it.
We'll circulate it.
Yeah.
Sure,
Okay.
I can give you the numbers. And then, I guess the key is that whoever answers the phone and say that they're a supervisor for 2815 is the person.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just fluff it off to somebody else. The
Right.
person who answers the phone and says that they're responsible for mail delivery in Chevy Chase is that person. There's nobody else, there's no special person that's gonna, come out and take care of your problem. Whoever you speak to that identifies themselves as a supervisor is the responsible party.
So do you have a few minutes, Mr. Jones, that you can wait and out? Because I know Mr. Welly has questions, maybe other people have questions, and we can move on with our meeting. And those particular questions can get answered.
Okay, and then I'll write down the phone
Karen,
numbers.
did you have anything you want to say?
No, I just think that, Richard, it's probably gonna be important for residents to keep the village informed. So even though they call Westlake or whatever, in order for you and for our office to know
Right.
the level of issues that are still existing, and I leave that up to you folks to
Right.
figure out what's the best way for people to email the village manager or you or whatever. But
Yep.
somehow we should know that.
Yeah, I've been getting quite a few of those emails since we sent the letter, and
Right.
that's fine, because I think it is useful to sort of gauge from our community how things are going.
Can I clarify too, that's not in place of them calling and lodging their own
Sure.
complaint. That would be to
Right.
aggregate information.
Right.
Just like
So
we do
that-
with the police.
Exactly, so that the village council and village management knows,
Right,
is this still a problem
right.
that we need to monitor?
Well, I thank you and Representative Van Hollen for your help arranging this.
Since you've been up since 7 a.m., you're gonna have some residents out there talking to you right now.
Yeah, they want to.
That's fine. Here's those
Okay.
numbers for the post office.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
You might just want to market the postal service as the weight loss potential, make it a fitness alternative.
Tell Weight Watchers to,
And did you want to leave your secret number?
Yeah.
Are you sure you want it?
You know what?
No, I
Sure to get
just,
the numbers from you and we'll.
here,
Write it down right there.
Glasses.
thank you again.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm trying to.
I can't see. I don't know what the glasses. I'm trying to get this card out of here.
Could I just write down the note?
Yeah, you can.
What do you
Where's the
need?
paper? I just need a paper now.
So just write it here, write
Oh,
it
here
right
it
on
is.
here.
Here it is.
Okay,
I am so tired.
Long day.
okay.
So was it a surge of retirements that kind of
Yes.
started all this?
Yes. When you start requiring people who are capable of retiring, when you start asking them to do more,
Right.
they say, "Well, I'll do more. I'll go.
Oh,
I'll go."
so then after they retired, then this created openings for everybody
Right.
else to
Yeah.
bid for their positions and so on.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
it's a younger workforce now, so
Uh-huh.
okay.
Okay.
They're not the same as
So we'll
guys
be
of
in
a different
20 years.
age.
Okay,
He's
well,
coming.
Thank you.
thank you for coming.
You're
Yes.
welcome.
And
Guys,
anyone who wants to
have a good
continue
meeting.
this conversation, available.
Arthur, if you wanna move over here,
Oh,
then,
okay.
so that,
Okay.
people, and so we're open for comments. This is for the normal, we're off.
Non-postal comments.
Non-postal, yes. Steve?
Again, Steve Schmo, Summit Avenue, and this will be a hopefully very brief comment, maybe question. And I do warn you that it'll be a question I will pose at every council meeting, except for the one in January where I won't be available. Lucky you. And it has to do with streetlighting.
Okay, you're gonna hear about it if
We
you
are gonna hear about
stay.
it tonight.
Yes, yes, yes,
8:55
yes.
PM on
And one suggestion that I'm going to make, I'm not sure because of whether I'll have the opportunity, is that if we're at the point where we want to get perhaps one opportunity for residents to give some input into what they want, maybe the thing that the council may want to consider is giving locations of different prototypes.
Yep,
That is on the
Telling-
agenda.
Okay, telling
That is
people,
exactly the
here
plan.
they are, and then leaving it to the people to do it or not do it.
Yes.
Right.
And if they don't,
Yep,
It's their own fault.
that's the plan.
Any other comments? Thank you, Steve. Anybody else, or we're moving on?
No, there is.
I'm sorry.
Good evening, my name is Elizabeth Goldberg, and I
Please
live at
raise your voice.
207 Oxford, Elizabeth Goldberg. We've been living out of the country for about 23 years, so I may be ignorant, but my question has to do about recycling, and the fact that I don't believe there is recycling of organic matter. It's not separated, nor what we call undifferentiated. And we just came from Italy, and there, you have an organic pickup with biodegradable bags, and you have plastic, glass and paper, which are all separate. And then you have something that is undifferentiated, so it's all the other stuff that doesn't fit those categories.
Do you,
So
have
I
you,
don't understand why here we're not doing something particularly about organic to separate it from this other mess that all goes in the same bag that goes into the blue containers outside. So.
I thought the organic stuff went into the leaf bags. Is that
That's
what you're
leaves.
calling it?
No,
I'm talking
no.
about kitchen.
Kitchen waste.
stuff.
No,
Kitchen
that-
waste,
this had been,
vegetable
right.
matter and that
Right.
kind of thing.
This had been considered a year ago, and we had decided at the time that it was too complicated, and not just complicated, but the research that had been done into it said it just didn't accomplish all that much. That it may make people feel good, but it didn't accomplish much in terms of saving on recycling or other matters.
Yeah, I just asked because of the question that came up on the listserv about the plastic bags.
Right, okay.
Those bags are going in with the food and
Yeah.
everything else, so.
Well,
it seems
shouldn't be
like a-
food, it's not food.
But
Well, I'm
also
not sure
compared
what
to
else.
Europe where you don't have disposal in the sink, because I think they're illegal in Europe. So I think there's a lot more food that's thrown away, while here it would actually probably go,
Go
down
down,
most
yeah.
of our drains.
Yeah.
Well, they use it there. I mean, there
Yeah.
are productive programs to reuse the organic matter, so it's not just tossed somewhere.
Right.
So
Right.
that's, it seemed to me that would be something that could be worked on, or found
Sure.
out there's a more creative, environmentally friendly use for waste. That's
Okay.
something to find.
Good point.
commercial service that will pick up.
Any other question? Okay, the next thing is audit report for the village for 2015. Joe McCatherine, who has done this for years for us. So you can only tell us the good news.
Okay, have a good evening. It's all good news. So, as you know, the financial package that we put out that gets distributed to the state and to the council, it's about 35 pages. My presentation is about 3 pages, so if it's not already been distributed, I have those.
No, we have copies in our books.
I'll run through this quickly since I hear you have a long night.
Yes, but it's fine.
As always, we perform our audit according to generally accepted auditing standards. We use specific audit programs developed for local governments. And in addition to your municipality, we audit 8 other municipalities in both Prince George's and Montgomery County. After performing our procedures and making our inquiries, we determined that your financial statements were fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Now, statements are kind of unique to governments. They have the first 2 pages are essentially how a business might report. They're showing all the assets and liabilities. And the second 2 pages are the traditional governmental reporting, budget-basis financial statements, primarily reporting on a current resources concept. So that's unique to your style of reporting. And that's what makes the statement so long. There are reconciliations between the 2 sets of statements within the complete set, and at the back we have detailed budgetary statements, and that's what most municipalities are looking at. They want to know, okay, this is what we projected to come in, this is what came in, this is what we projected to expand, and this is what happened. We also have a separate, what we call a management letter that just goes through some kind of boilerplate language, and I'll skip over that. There's nothing significant there. There is one accounting estimate that I'll speak to briefly in a second. But basically the bottom line is your revenues were $50,000 over budget, and your expenditures were almost $137,000 under budget. So you had budgeted a surplus of $221,000, and you actually came in at $408,000. So you did almost twice as good as you thought you would do. So there's the good news. The budget variance is primarily your increase is income tax. Almost 75% of your total revenue is income tax. So that's the big item, and that was $50,000. $50,382 over budget, and your overall revenues were $50,215 over budget. So that's essentially the whole package. The expenditures, there's a few line items that jump out as being under budget, but pretty much it's fairly even across the board. There's no significant variance more than $25,000 on $590,000 actual expenditures, and they were budgeted at $727,000. Comparing this year to last year, your revenues were $119,000 better than last year. The one item that kind of draws that down and is the significant difference between the 2 sets of financial statements is a liability owed back to the state for income taxes in connection with the Wynn case. The Wynn case is essentially it's a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that said that the states had to refund all the money paid, not just the state portion of the money. So the local municipalities have an obligation to refund tax that was paid. Basically, what the state is using as an estimate right now is the years 2009 to 2013. And your liability is estimated, I think it's about $129,000. That is about 5% of your average annual income tax collections. That number could change because the number really comes down to who's going to file a claim, because not everyone's eligible for that claim. It depends if you had income earned in more than one state, and was it taxed in both states, and did you file for a credit.
And are the right addresses attached to?
And are the right addresses? Well, that's important to income tax in general. That's the most critical item, is to make sure the village gets their share of income tax. So the Wynn case affects nearly all the municipalities. Montgomery County is more heavily affected than Prince George's County, for instance.
the two in Prince George's County review had almost no impact. We had one in Frederick County that the estimate was so small that it wasn't even mentioned in their financial statement. So you won't start hitting that liability back to the state until beginning July of 2016. They'll just start withholding that, and they'll revise the estimate up or down depending on claims, and that'll go over, I think, 9 quarters until they get their money back. The state's working with you on that, and I don't think it'll have any terribly significant.
Okay.
But we have a budget, that $129,000, you'll have to start budgeting for that in that fiscal year beginning July of 2016. Now, the first 2 sets of statements I talk about are on a kind of a business basis. That hits the bottom line now. So that there's a big difference between those. And that's just for third-party bonding companies, for instance, which is not an issue of yours because you don't have such debt. And as I mentioned, income tax is your big item, so that's a big item. As I mentioned, your expenses your revenue's up this year. Your expenditures were also up 19%. You had budgeted, in 2014, your expenses were almost $520,000, and this year they're $590,000. And I've shown in my brief summary there which line items are increased. Almost every category increased. And of course, some of those increases were budgeted as well. So, but the bottom line is your net position is approximately 4 times your annual expenditures, which I think is a pretty healthy surplus moving forward in future years. The cash and investments, you're very liquid, make up about 92% of your total assets. You have, some municipalities might have large receivables for property taxes. You don't have that issue. Your assets are all liquid and available. And as I mentioned, the wind tax liability is your biggest liability now, and then that really won't hit your cash for another year or so. That's a quick run through. As I mentioned, the wind liability, I went through and averaged what your income tax over the period that the state's currently measuring. You averaged about $475,000 a year in income tax, and your wind liability is about $25,000 a year. So it's not terribly significant, but it will have to be paid back. Any quick questions?
They catch us.
Might have jumped over.
I think it's a good summary.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
very good. It's good to
Yeah.
hear those estimates for the wind
Yeah.
liabilities. Okay.
Do we have the packet that you usually do? I don't know if you gave it to Tori already, it's
The hard copy,
The hard
the
copy.
Yeah, that,
35-page one.
They were delivered October 31st. I think.
right.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And,
Tori's not
um,
saying, maybe not. So maybe you guys connect and, because I'd like to look
Postal
through it.
Service.
Okay.
Yeah, the fuller report.
You need to ask the postal service.
actually, they were delivered to Dan Baden, so he might.
Oh, that's
We gotta
why.
get Dan Baden back over here.
You should deliver them, yeah, here, not there. Okay,
We'll
thank
do that
you,
in the
Joe.
future. Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
good. Good report.
Thank you.
Okay, and now, next on is the recommendations following the legal compliance review. Tiffany?
So Patrick is here from Funk and Bolton to tell us how we did. Again, this was just a general checkup. It's been several years since the charter, the code, the policies, and the ordinances have all been looked at in relation to each other, as well as state law that we must comply with and county law that we opt into. And so that's what we had Funk and Bolton do, just kind of a wellness check after they were selected after an open recruitment process.
Yes, so we spent a few weeks reviewing the charter and the town code and the village code and the resolutions and policies. Overall, we think that they're in good shape. We've provided our recommendations and revisions, some of which are for legal and conflict purposes. Some of the language is outdated, some of it isn't completely consistent with state law that it cites to. Some are just for clarity and consistency. The charter's, I think, about 12, 15 pages. You could actually probably whittle it down a little bit further, make it even more concise, and that's, and clear in some areas. So those are, we've provided some recommendations. I can go through them if you like. I don't think I need to go through all of them.
There wasn't any, I didn't have particular questions on it.
No, I think
It was
that
very
the
clearly
report's
stated.
very- yeah.
I'm
the
happy to
report's
answer
good.
any questions you have about anything in there.
I had one question about, right at the very beginning, you note that we do not use the, what would you call it, like the terms that we define.
Right.
We've, from here on in, the village of Martin's Addition will be called the village, but sometimes we don't do that.
Right.
Does that have legal ramifications? Could somebody say, this ordinance really doesn't apply because you used the wrong nomenclature? Or is
Not
it just?
with regard to that specific term, I think it's clear what you mean. It's just, and it's not something that you need to go out and change tomorrow. It's just one of those things where you would say, well, we're gonna refer to it as this, and then it's not. Like,
It's not, right.
The council is another where it says,
Right.
refers to the council in the long form, and then it says it's abbreviated as council, then it's called village council. It's just a little.
Okay.
It's not so much a legal issue as it is just for.
Okay, because as I read that, I thought, I'm wondering if this is leaving us to somebody who really wants to argue this in court, that the terms are wrong, and that these ordinances don't apply to me, or something of that sort, but that's okay.
Not in
Okay,
that
that's-
particular case, but
okay.
in some cases that can create a problem.
Okay.
It's better to be clean. Again, it's better to be clear and concise and,
And consistent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and that was part of the goal of this report, is
Yeah.
to look for those inconsistencies, to look for the places where we aren't in compliance
Right.
with Maryland law, for instance, and I think you've done a good job
Thank you.
of identifying those
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
And have given us good language, on how to move forward.
Right. Good.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it is serious, but there is enough,
There's
some places
there's a
we can
lot
be
there.
cutting stuff out and.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good editing job.
I mean,
Yeah.
and a lot of this is based on what we've done with other jurisdictions and how we've seen things, like the check issue is something where
Right.
we've actually seen that in operation and see how that can create a problem if it's not clear. And sometimes you have to think of these problems, not just, well, we understand how it works, but what happens 5 years from now, 10 years
Right,
from now, where
right.
there may be a different group of people and maybe they don't get along so well, and you wanna have some clarity so that there aren't issues, and
Right.
things aren't open to interpretation.
Which I think two things that you touched on, and just since we have talked about them more, the clarification of roles of the elections
Right.
committee, meeting the council to adopt
Yeah.
policies and procedures for that, and then also having an ethics committee and having clear roles for them. They're things that we've talked about, but it's good and bad that they were able to identify them for us as well as very
Right,
specific things.
Just so you know, we're working on that,
Yes. Yes.
before you came.
Yeah.
That's it, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Thank you, yes,
Yeah.
I appreciate your coming and appreciate the report.
Absolutely, happy to help.
Thank
Good,
If you
thank
have
you.
questions, I'm happy to address them.
Okay,
anytime.
great, thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Peter.
For residents, the next steps, this should be included, I think we're gonna include it in the minutes, their report. Ron has it, and the idea will be maybe one or two council members can go through it and see, okay, what are the things we're already working on? And then what are the things that we might have been brought to light that we need to spend our time on? And then we'll have to prioritize that list, because there's plenty to do.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Update from the election committee. Naomi? On behalf of Leanne,
Leanne Anderson, who's the chair, and included in the elections committee is Marty Langlin, Natalie Willie, and Steve Trowan, and myself. We have met twice. So do I need to review what our charge is? It's really to review the elections process and make sure that it's transparent and that we have as much opportunity for people to vote with no restrictions. And so it was good to have Steve on our committee because he served in the last committee and he had a pretty good inventory of the issues that we've inherited. We've had a chance to discuss them now. And we have a draft list of policies and procedures that we would like to put forward, but we would like to solicit input from the village residents. And so we would start with a notice in the newsletter. In the next newsletter, we have some language to share with the council. I'm not gonna go through it now, but we can send
Right.
you the language. And then follow it up with perhaps a survey. The notice is really more open-ended. The survey will be relatively specific, such as should we have a post office box for the early ballots and make sure that they're protected? When and where do people really want to vote? Do they want to do it at the election, at the celebration, versus can they do it by email, etc.? So more specific kinds of questions might follow through a survey, and I have a question about what the process about issuing such a survey would be. And we're meeting again in December to go over our thinking, and then hope to hold a public meeting in January so that people can attend and air their concerns. We would share then the results of the survey. So the process is start with a notice, follow it up with specific questions in a survey, gather the data, present it in a January meeting for discussion among residents, and then gather everybody's input and recommend to the council.
I'd really hope that we would be done with this process in November. And so
That's
I
not really
know.
what I was led to believe. So
Right.
tell me what your deadline
And
is
so
and what
I
you-
thought maybe we could have this done. Partly, we've delayed, asking for volunteers for the ethics committee because some of the members of the elections committee had indicated an interest, but that they wanted to finish this project first. Either if this project goes on, then I think we're going to have to open the ethics committee because we need to get that process started too.
Yeah.
And so you can have more time, but it's going to interfere with who, because I know a couple of you said at the time, that's fine, I'll do this, but I really want to be on the ethics committee.
Well, I guess it's a discussion we can have among the five of us, but I don't think, I think we can overlap a little bit. Or we can shrink the elections committee,
Yeah.
or.
We had
can
assumed we'd do that,
make-
yeah.
Because it's,
To a minimum of 3.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah, so I can't speak for the committee as a whole, but I'm
Right.
thinking that we can probably wrap things up by the end of January.
okay.
And between now and then, and given the holidays, I'm not sure what you can start or you can decide.
Ron,
Right.
since what they're supposed to put forward is for council adoption, and then we're
Right.
gonna start to run into the elections process and the budgeting process for next year, with what they put forward, doesn't that need to give us time to have an open
Yeah, we have to, yeah, it's gonna be,
discussion about
we're
it
going
as
to
well?
adopt it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
maybe we need to get concrete with them about what our timeline has to be,
Yeah.
so that we can adopt, and that will give them a full stop.
Right,
Is that a good?
right, but I don't know what is that timeline.
We will figure it out after this meeting.
Okay,
Okay,
that would be helpful, I think, to have a deadline.
right, and because then also the ethics committee, I think that we need to, have something in place before the election also.
Yes.
So maybe we can send out announcement that we're accepting volunteers for the ethics committee. And
And
so
then
we
folks
get
from
that
the
process
elections committee.
started also.
Yeah,
I think we need to do
Sure,
that.
there's no reason not.
Okay,
okay,
Natalie, thank you.
Naomi.
I'm sorry, Naomi. I'll get it. Okay. Oh, now we move on to the Centennial Committee.
Don't sit down.
So, we have a sort of a we don't have sort of, we have a volunteer who is interested in helping with the Centennial Committee. And So I would like to consider us appointing a chair. And do we need that purpose?
I can,
Can you
your
read?
call,
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
read that.
Okay, so, the purpose that the chairman is proposing for the council, right?
Right.
The Village of Martin's Additions Council hereby establishes a temporary centennial celebration committee. The committee shall be comprised of a minimum of 3 members, including 1 council member. It shall develop and recommend for council approval a program for the village to celebrate 100 years of self-governance, tentatively scheduled for the week of April 10th, 2016. Upon council approval, the committee will execute the events in collaboration with the village office staff. After completion of the events, the committee shall be dissolved.
With our thanks.
With our thanks. So, do we need a motion to adopt that?
Yes.
Is there a motion?
I move to adopt.
Okay, Susan moves, second.
I'll second.
Questions?
No, no, sounds good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Yep.
Good.
So we need to have a invitation to residents to volunteer for the committee.
Also, and we need to have an invitation to someone on the council to volunteer.
Right.
Right. We'll get that volunteer after the meeting. Okay.
Torture is illegal.
But no, the reason is that committees require a council member.
That's right.
On the committees.
Right. Okay, we will, Naomi, we will have a volunteer for you at the end of this meeting.
Okay, so I guess I need to make it clear that I'm volunteering to chair the committee?
Correct.
Okay, and I accept.
Thank you.
I volunteer. and I accept.
Thank you. Okay, moving on is the action on the committee minutes from April 15th. Those have been approved by email,
Yes.
so it's just a motion to approve them formally.
I will move to approve the minutes as distributed and corrected.
Okay, second,
Second.
Susan seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, tree committee, updates, and
Okay.
this is a discussion, we've had issue raised about what native trees we're using and how we're planting trees in the right-of-way. Paul, do you and Dan want to come up here?
No.
And
I'm on the ball back here, I don't like it.
we'd give you a chance to talk to our village about what you're doing, and also answer the questions by those who are concerned about the trees.
Maybe you could also note that some of the questions about native trees in the right-of-way came out of one of the recommendations from our
Tree committee.
tree committee,
Right.
where they were discussing native
Right.
trees for private property.
Right.
I'd like to speak to that in a minute.
Right.
Thank you.
Oh, wow.
That's all right. I'll do my best work on tripping. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. In front of you is a comprehensive list that I just did for the community of the types of trees you have planted on the streets right now. You will see that on the left column, there's the family of trees, Aceraceae, which are the maples, the oaks, etc. And if you go down the left column, you'll find that there are 20 different families of trees that are planted along the streets in Martin's Additions. You can count them if you'd like, there are 20. To the middle are in each family are the types of trees. In other words, in the maple family, we have sugar maples, red maples, Amur maples, and Norway maples. You will see to the right or to the left of, for instance, Amur maple and Norway maple, little hashtag, and those trees are not native. The other ones are. You will also see that, for instance, there are 66 sugar maples,
Wait, can you say that again? Hashtag means not native?
non-native. Okay, you'll see that there are 66 sugar maples, et cetera, and on the right column, you'll see that, the maples constitute 32% of the trees in Martin's Additions. If you go down the column of the number of trees, you'll see that there are 442 trees planted in Martin's Additions. With 325 houses in Martin's Additions, this is almost 1.35 trees per house.
In the right of way.
In the right of way, okay? Dan and I drive around the community each fall. We identify places where trees can be planted. Right now, there are 7 or 8 spots in Martin's Additions for trees, and those are because of removals over the past year, and they will be planted this fall in those locations. So you're going to have about 450 trees in Martin's Additions. You will also see in the lower right-hand side that, lower right, that 54% of your trees are what would be considered native trees, and 46% are not native trees. Pretty much 50-50. And you will also see a little higher up what we've decided are planting considerations when we look at a spot. The number one consideration is, will the tree that we are proposing do well in that location? There are certain types of trees that are pretty tough, certain trees that are wimps, and we try not to plant the wimps of the trees. So we need the right tree for the right spot. We have to have that tree withstand urban conditions. There can't be insect and disease problems on the tree. No objectionable fruits or nuts. It has to have interest. There has to be interesting leaves, interesting bark, etc. Diversity in the community is very important. That's why we have 20 different types of families. There are also 39 different types of trees in Martin's Additions, so you have an arboretum here. Very few communities have that kind of diversity on their trees. The trees have to be readily available from nurseries, and they have to be within budget. There's some really expensive trees out there that we can put in, but if we can get everything we need for the kind of the.
Is the diversity that sort of for color, or is it for protection against disease? Or?
Yes. It's for. Okay. When I went to college in Michigan, we were having Dutch elm disease problems, and for instance, the city of Detroit had all American elms, and Dutch elm disease wiped out every elm. Okay. It was always brought in my forestry classes. It was, you have to have diversity. You have to have lots of different things. The city of Detroit took this to heart and planted all ash trees to replace the elms, okay? Well, guess what happened? Emerald ash borer came in and has wiped out all the ash trees, okay? So the reason for diversity is not only for insect and disease problems, but also it adds interest to the community. As you're driving down the street, there's not a monoculture. It's a mishmash of trees, and that's purposeful. We decided on that years and years ago. Now, I have kind of a history with Martin's Additions in that I have been part of Martin's Additions for 38 years. I don't look that old, but I, oh, you laugh. I lived in Martin's Additions in 1977, and I've been caring for the trees since 1980. So it's been a long time, little hiatus for a while, but for the most part, I've been intimately involved with the trees of Martin's Additions. So I've kind of grown up with these things, and I've watched them, and I've nurtured them, and I think that all in all, your urban forest is doing very well. You lost a couple of trees, half a dozen trees this year, out of 442 trees. That's not much. That's pretty good. And so you know, you're losing them, you're replacing them. The beauty of Martin's Additions is you have not only diverse species of tree, you have diverse ages of trees. You have young ones, middle ones, and old, so that it's a continual process in tree care, that all your trees aren't reaching maturity at the same time, that when you lose a tree, it's not a monumental loss, okay? It's a temporary hole. We put a new tree in, and the tree grows and develops so that you maintain that, I think, 63% canopy cover that you now have according to the report by the committee. And I, if I may address that for a little bit, again, I've been in Martin's Additions for a long time. I don't see a wanton removal of trees. People seem to respect the tree canopy that you have, and they're not taking down trees just to take them down. And so I haven't seen a wholesale change as I drive up and down the streets of trees missing, which is, Martin's Addition should be thanked for that. The residents should be thanked for the fact that they appreciate their canopy cover. And so, we're mindful. I'm mindful of that as we walk around, as we drive around too. And when people are looking at houses and buying houses, it's from the curb view that they're seeing these houses. And when they drive down a street that's lined with trees, it's a good thing. Okay, so I'm seeing that in Martin's Additions. Now, to address the issue of native versus non-native, I'm not quite sure what native means. Maybe someone can describe that for me?
Sure, it's indigenous to the Piedmont area of the United States. Native to our area would be Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Native.
All right, and that's fine, because
By
it's...
native means it originally grew here, we didn't ever have to plant it.
Okay, but it's all Virginia, Piedmont area. Okay, so white pine is not native.
Not native to here.
Not native to here, but it grows in the Piedmont. It grows up and down Appalachia, it grows throughout Pennsylvania. Okay, but it's not native to Montgomery County. Okay, so we wouldn't consider, because some people consider native to the Western Hemisphere. Some people to the United States. Some people, it's seed grown within 50 miles of, or trees grown within 50 miles of here. They wouldn't consider natives to be a variety of trees. For instance, a sugar maple, it has to be the original and no variety, okay? Which I just have to get an understanding of what we're talking about in the term of native. Is that what?
She's our expert.
Okay, so that's what the council thinks is native?
Yeah, that's
Sure.
okay. That's the tree committee, what Chris says is native, that's what we think.
Okay, so that's a tree committee, okay.
Yeah.
Well then, most of the trees in Martin's Additions aren't native. If that's what your definition of native is, because we don't plant a native sugar maple. We don't plant a native red maple. They're all, like October Glory, for instance, is a variety of red maple. We plant those. And the reason we plant these is because they have been bred for specific interest. October Glory is a magnificent looking tree in October or November. The native red maple, kind of mousy, okay? If I may say so. It's not as vivid as the new improved varieties. Most nurseries, most nurseries don't have the original. There are some now that do.
Can I just say something about that then? I don't think that Martin's Additions is looking for this purest part that you are explaining. In other words, just the absolute native that have gone out into the mountains of Pennsylvania and dug up. So let us incorporate the subspecies and the varieties
Okay.
into
Okay. All right,
consideration.
well, again, that changes the definition that you gave me of native. Because when we were talking native, you were saying, this is the definition of native.
That's true biologically,
Okay.
but when we are talking about the trees that we're going to plant here.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
My wife and I can get you some pines from Rome.
Good, we can do that. We can plan that.
Well, are we at a place, Chris, where have you got a list, or do you?
Well, let me make a suggestion that the tree committee sit down with Dan and Paul.
That's a good idea.
And discuss the pros, the cons, the benefits, and reasons why we want diversity and so on.
Right.
So we don't have to do it here. We can have a separate meeting with the tree committee.
And that's fine.
Good.
Well,
Yeah.
Chris?
Chris?
How soon do you need to know, to plant?
I've already placed the order for this fall. They're dug.
Okay.
Well, I wish that we had been told about that. About what
Well, I think,
list
I
is
understand
emailed,
that,
what
yeah.
we plan.
But I think we have to move ahead
Working
on
on the
that.
future.
Yeah,
That list was presented at the last council meeting.
right.
But it didn't get sent out until.
Well,
Soon
we may
after.
be at fault here, Chris, but we've got to plant the trees. I mean, they've ordered them, we approved it at the council meeting. And so I think that there's opportunity for you working with, and the tree committee, not just you, but all of them, working with Paul and Dan to come up with a
Was
list.
that on the agenda for the last meeting?
Probably was. I can't think of, because we did get the list. Is it in the
Yeah, but
minutes?
the list, as I understood it, was not always up for like approval by the
Okay.
committee. It was sort of a part
This is
of
what we're doing.
This was informative.
That was the point I was gonna raise.
Okay.
Yeah.
The charter for the tree committee has been completed, and that they have provided us with proposals for us to act on. And their charter, Arthur, correct me if I'm wrong, was focused on recommendations for things to do on private property.
Well,
It was not-
yeah, it wasn't only, but it was focused on private property.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're either opening
Deviating.
it back up.
Yeah, well, here's the question. I went back to look at the resolution that created the committee.
Yeah.
There's no date, there's no final date when it comes to an end, like the Centennial Committee. And it was charged with these, what was it called?
A writing of a report within a year.
Yeah, putting together a report.
On
Which
trees
we
on
have.
private,
Well, I don't have the original, I don't have the in front of me.
I have.
The what was it called? The work plan or the?
Scope of work.
Scope of work,
But,
yeah.
but previous to the committee that you chaired, that we were on, we had a committee appointed, probably 8, 9 years ago, that our charge was to look into the trees that were being planted on the right of ways. And Steve was on that committee and a couple of other people too. And we did write up a report.
Right.
And present it, and we did say, please plant native trees that are native to our
Right.
area. It doesn't have to be strictly Martin's Additions, to say Montgomery County.
Is that the,
because they're
scope of
best
work?
For wildlife,
Ah.
they are the best, they attract birds.
Yeah, to create a committee to assess the state of the tree canopy in the village, and if appropriate, propose policies
Right.
to remedy identified deficiencies or to otherwise improve the state of the village
Yeah,
canopy.
it doesn't say private or
Okay,
public on
but you
that.
guys
That's
had
what I
originally focused on, I mean, the
But
four.
We did,
But-
that
but-
was what we
but-
focused on.
But your report,
It focused on private,
it focused totally on private.
right, right.
Okay, there was no mention of
Right.
any village.
So as I,
But that had before, I'm saying, about 8, 9 years ago.
but as I read that, it wasn't clear that the terms of reference of the tree committee has ended. There's no date to it. And there's no,
Well, if-
there's a continuing role according to that, unless there is a resolution to end it.
Well, was it not to complete this report?
There was a terms of reference given to the committee, but it wasn't, I went back to check this out, whether we're at the end of our life, and there's no, on the record, it doesn't say anything, that you write the report and you're done, go home. And there was no date to it, so that the tree committee continues unless there's a motion to end it. As I read
I
it, yeah.
don't have this stuff on me, so I don't
Okay.
Yeah,
I
it,
think,
it was created in perpetuity unless you abolish it, but it does state that they are to submit a written report within 1 year.
Which we did, yeah. And the tree, yeah.
And the
Got
previous committee also did.
Right.
so I think the question is one for the council to decide, are we asking to continue with a charge to this committee? Like, they presented the report that was asked for.
Right.
Are we saying, okay, we will deal with what you've given us, and then, ask you to go and look at right-of-way and questions about that? Or do we, the council, say, okay, it sounds like there's more that you guys want to review and discuss. We're not gonna look at the 4 recommendations, proposals that you gave us right now. You guys can add the right-of-way, native, non-native discussion, and then.
No, I don't, no,
give
I don't,
us-
I would say, we have proposals out here on the table. That's table, that's to be considered. If anything additional would be additional.
Okay.
So does that mean that the tree committee has kind of delivered what it was meant to deliver? And at this point-
As a first charge.
So we would have to give them a second charge for
Right.
specific work that we're asking.
Not necessarily. Yeah, well, you could just say, the tree committee could meet to discuss this offline and then report back to the council.
About, yeah,
Instead
and
of-
that seems not
Instead of taking up
unreasonable.
the time of
Right,
the
our
of the
time
council.
here,
Right.
figuring out
Right.
trees and
Right.
what's native and
Right.
what's.
Yeah, exactly.
And, other than, at least personally, I feel like diversity, I mean, our village is really pretty, and I think that diversity is important. So,
Let me just make one more comment, especially to Paul. Paul, I'm not that much of a purist that I can't accept a sugar maple that is done a certain way. But I like to be able to see trees in Martin's additions that blend right in, say, with Rockland Park, which adjoins us, or, town of Chevy Chase Village, Section 5, they all emphasize for their fruit trees to be native trees, and now I'm talking about any species, it doesn't matter. And I walk up past your beautiful sugar maples, and, I can't tell the difference between the ones there and them others.
I can't either.
okay. So we're going to, you, Paul, and Dan are meeting with the tree committee, are going to look at native, non-native, and come back with some sort of recommendation to the council on what we may consider. And you should do that, what? Can you do it within the month, so we can have that at December?
Let's see, what is this?
Or do you want to wait?
Yeah.
Well, we
Or
can talk
January?
about it, I don't know if we can hash it all out in that time, but we could
Yeah, we
certainly.
could,
You
we'll have
could
it,
try.
sit down.
Okay,
We check,
okay, so it's up to you guys to set it up, thank you
okay.
very much. Okay, we're moving.
No, we're not, we still have the recommendations to do,
Right.
to talk about.
Ah.
And I want to push that. The proposals.
Okay,
We have to go through these proposals and debate them and consider them. I hope you've done your homework, Richard, to consider the various
I have,
details of
but
this.
that's fine,
Let me put forward the first proposal.
okay.
Is to create a budget for the subsidy of the planting of trees on private property. And I would be happy if we just consider that tonight, and then fought off the others where we can have a
And
full-scale debate.
so that we would contribute an amount certain
We would choose, and this is where the Paul, Dan, and the village management would have to establish procedures to do this. So it would be, resident would apply for the planting of a tree. A resident would apply for the planting of a tree. If examined by the arborist, it looks like this tree would go well on this property, the village would purchase it and plant it and pay for it, except we are calling for the resident to put in $100 of their own money in order to have skin in the game, to have some of their own money tied up in this investment.
And if the property owner, if the tree dies because of mismanagement, whatever, it's a one-shot deal.
Right, yeah. You don't go in, we won't go in and replant it.
And that we would recommend the tree.
There's an approved list, from an approved list.
From an approved list.
Yes.
Okay.
Of native species.
Right.
Before we get into the specific proposal, we had some questions about procedure and what we would have to do last time. Do we just adopt proposal and fund them? Do we have to have if we say this is our new tree policy, do we need to have a written policy?
Is it an ordinance or just because it's budget?
It can be just a policy, setting up a subsidy program. I think it should be in writing so that the rules are clear for everyone. And depending on where the money is coming from, you may need to amend your budget.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So I thought that, and maybe I'm wrong, so correct me if I am, but I thought that we were gonna look at specific ways of how we're gonna actually administer this.
I think that whether this is for the council to do it or whether the manager together with the arborist and Dan.
Okay, because I thought that was one of the deliverables for today's meeting.
Well, we could. I thought I would like to get an approval of the program, of the approval of a policy of this kind.
Okay,
But we haven't really, we never had to put it to vote or discussed it. Are we in favor of it? Are we against it? What are the pluses? What are the minuses?
I think I like the idea. My questions are cost, time, energy, and effort, and I think that's kind of one of the, I wanna know chicken or egg. I wanna have the conversation, maybe it's a Tori and Paul have to talk, okay, how much would this actually take effort-wise of us to do before I can say, I like the idea of the proposal, I'm just not sure I'm ready to say, right now, this is what Tori's gonna spend her time doing.
Right,
Does
so that
make
was supposed to help us shape the implications so we could make the decision. That was my understanding. Right, so we needed more information than this, at least for me personally, to make that decision.
Well,
I was gonna give you some ideas, okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
A typical tree is a 2-inch diameter tree in the $400 to $450.
That's what we get. That's what section
But that's just
5.
to purchase the tree, right?
No,
That was to plant.
That's to purchase and
And
plant
plant.
it. Now, that's a street tree also, so if we're carting a tree behind someone's house, having to hump it up, 6 steps or whatever, you're gonna add a little bit more on. But just say $450 a tree.
In section 5, it averaged 400 to 500 per tree.
Okay.
So,
We had their
so you're
budget
looking
numbers.
at, if the homeowner's gonna pay $100, you're looking at $400.
Okay.
Now, may I also ask a question? You're talking about canopy trees. Can people plant a dogwood in their backyard?
I think the committee was only going to subsidize, we were suggesting just canopy trees.
Okay, because we looked at, when the committee was doing this study, I was asked to look at 5 sites where houses had been torn down and a new house was put in. And the idea was, could we plant canopy trees on these locations? All 5 places, no.
Right.
Couldn't do it because of retaining walls, existing trees, or most importantly, rainwater retention centers, okay? There were some sites that maybe in the far left rear corner, we could stick a big tree in, but as the tree grew, because of canopy trees over it, the tree would start growing up at a strange angle, okay? And we decided that probably wasn't a good spot to plant a big tree. Now, small trees, absolutely, but this doesn't look
Well,
like.
well, this program here, that's the next proposal. The first proposal is just on residents' request. This is residents request a tree to be put in at a particular site that they think is a good site.
Okay.
And then we would have someone like you say, is that a good site? Would this tree do well there?
For a large canopy
Right.
tree,
Yes.
okay?
This is addressing particularly the canopy tree
Okay, so
situation.
my procedural question then would be,
Yeah.
would you ask the arborist to, first of all, approve it for that
Right,
location?
evaluate and
And
approve,
then
right.
ask the arborist to verify later that the tree was actually planted using the subsidy? Or these are the source, we'd be paying the arborist by the hour,
Yeah.
or whatever,
Minute.
minute. And
Okay.
those are the two factors I
Right.
considered on
And
this aspect.
Whoever, I would suspect that you would be doing the supervising of the planting as well.
Could very well be.
Unless we wanted to do something like an RFP to put it out, but I thought we piggyback it on the public right-of-way plantings.
Yeah. Our policy would be, this is a new purchase, so I would think it would be an RFP.
Well, it's not a new purchase, we're buying, purchasing and planting trees right now. It's a new program, it's an addition to it.
Okay.
But it's not a new function that in the village, it's an expansion of a function.
We would have to add to the costs the arborist's time.
Right,
To
right,
pre-approve the request
Right.
and then verify later
Yes.
that it had been done as
Yes.
subsidy.
Any coordination from Tori's end, to
There-
I don't know, did you guys envision just like, here's a list, residents pick from it?
Yeah.
Or were we gonna have like some
No,
sort
here-
of presentation?
Now, here's a list,
Okay.
and we could put together a pamphlet of here's what they look like, that
Okay,
sort
why
of
don't
thing.
we do this, to say, it appears that we are generally supportive of it, but would like to see the details of it, is there an administrative burden, how do you see it being implemented? Can you, and the costs, beyond the, what the proposed cost, I don't know how much $100 covers of the trees that are being planted. Are we into $300 with every tree, of 400?
What, for the total cost?
Right,
Yeah.
that they're paying $100, but
Right.
in general,
I figured, we figured $400 village cost. on the
village
average.
costs.
Yeah.
But that's
So
just
the
for the tree.
arborists and.
Tree and
And I'm just
planting.
saying, well, my time
Yeah.
is not additional, because I'm not paid hourly, but the arborist time is hourly.
Right.
So, or
Unless it
incremental.
puts so much strain on your time that we
But I-
need additional.
Well, let me say, in section 5, Francis did, they had a form, people send in the form, she gave it to the arborist, he took a look, he said, okay, go, and that was it. That was the system.
Okay.
Is that the place where you said they never verified that people actually?
Well, that's what no, they did verify, that other things they didn't verify,
Okay.
but. In this program, it was very simple, cut and dried. A form, the resident
And how
filled it
many
in.
trees did they?
The first year was a lot, 100.
Right.
And then after that was about 10 trees a year. And what this indicated, there is a tremendous, a potential, people would like to do it, but they don't know how. We give them a program and say, oh, God, there's somebody there who can find the nursery, select a tree, put it in, evaluate it. So the first year, so I suggest going with a small amount for the rest of the fiscal year.
So just 100 trees at $400 is $40,000.
$40,000 to $50,000.
For the first year.
We don't have to do
not
that.
including arborist
I suggest starting small, getting the system going.
Right.
Figuring out how it works and then building from that.
Okay.
If I
Yeah,
may
go ahead.
add, are we only talking then just native trees? That's
That's what's on the
From the
That's
report.
not
Look on the last page of the report, there's a list.
Yeah, those are all
Okay.
native trees, many of which, I saw those,
Yeah.
many of which I would not I
For-
would not
okay.
recommend planting a black walnut in someone's yard. Yeah. Big fruit,
Okay,
okay?
yeah.
And there's some other, or
Right,
an
okay,
ash,
okay,
for an ash,
yeah.
for instance.
Okay.
But we need to hash that out.
Right.
Okay.
You hash that out.
I'll hash it out. I'll
With-
figure it out.
Dan,
I'll
you
figure it out.
haven't, Dan, you
Okay.
haven't said anything. Do you want to say anything?
No, I'm going with this guy.
Okay.
Oh, Dan, no.
Okay, so do you know, yes, in concept, we approve this. Is that right or not?
Well,
But we want more information. It's worth your time to get more information together on what the costs would be and how you think it would be implemented, because we are generally in favor of it.
Okay. Well, the cost in Section 5 were the same average cost as we spend on trees.
Right.
Here's one, the one thing that we had to redo with like the building stuff, and I wasn't around for the initial calculation, was we went back and looked at the amount of office administration time of those things. So if it's a simple form and all they do is fill it out once, that's one thing, but if this is a back and forth that may happen over a period of, I like that tree or I don't like that tree, I think that's a question that I, you know.
Okay.
For
Okay,
all of the
let's move-
proposals, 1, 2, 3, I think they're all gonna involve arborists' time.
Yeah.
And I say that specifically because, you know, the village arborist is the one that needs to verify potentially that.
Let me
tree-
suggest that the next meeting you read the rest of the proposals. And Ron, I'd like you to see how it would be best implemented in code, resolution, and charter or what. I have some suggestions there, but I'm not sure what would be appropriate.
And I actually have a question too. So are we talking about this now, or
Are
are
we-
we
do you
not?
want
The
to-
rest
you wanna
of the
continue
proposals,
this?
yeah, that's,
Well, and Tori had asked the question.
Okay. This-
Well, my main question about proposals 2 and 3 was how it was verifiable regarding the trees cut down in the 12 months prior to that.
That was added,
I was just wondering if that's something.
it's not verifiable.
Okay, would we be sending the arborist out to
No,
check?
no.
Okay. And then with regard to the condition of planting other trees, what if, because it's tied to a building permit.
Yeah.
So what if the builder cuts only what's absolutely required to build that house, then closes out the permit, gets their performance bond back, and now they do landscaping? That includes cutting down all the trees on that property and doing something else. There's nothing that would prevent them from doing that, because you're tying it to the existence
Right.
of a building permit, but they
Right.
could do it in a
something,
sequentially
yeah,
different way.
right.
So I just was,
That's right.
okay.
There's all sorts of.
I just wanted to point that out.
Right.
Could I just say that the town of Chevy Chase and Section 5 have programs already that you could ask.
okay.
One thing about your
Yeah.
report, however, is that you said that Section 3 has a tree ordinance. They do not. They do not have Section 3. does
Oh,
not-
Section 3, I say? Section 5.
3, no, it says in here, Section 3 has an ordinance that says that you can't take down, can't take
I think
down
it was
tree
Section
property.
5, unless I made a
It says 3
mistake.
and 5.
Oh,
But that's, I can't find it right now, but they do not have
Okay.
an ordinance.
It says it on page 2.
And I should also say, well, I don't, you just don't seem to have a problem with tree removal in Martin's additions, is the bottom line. It just doesn't seem to be an issue, but, yeah, it's in here somewhere.
yeah, I do see Section 3.
Yeah,
Okay,
that is not, that's not correct.
okay.
Could I just have one more minute to say something?
That's it, though.
Yeah, I got it.
We have to move on.
Yeah, but, I mean, we're not talking just about the trees, we're talking about the total environment, we're talking about the beneficial insects that come to the native trees because they grew up with them, so to speak. The birds come because of those insects, so it's a whole ecological chain of life. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. On this third proposal, do you know about the taking down trees and replacing them? You know, because of the water,
Well, we just said, Dan,
water
Paul just
requirements,
said.
that's gonna be a problem.
Well, we do say that there has to be some kind of a variance process here. That there will be cases where this cannot be done.
Right.
And the builder has to be able to explain that. We haven't set out a variance procedure, but we do say there has to be a variance procedure without being more specific about what that would be.
So maybe for the different proposals, I mean, some of them sound like they could be done by policy, but some of them sound like they would have to be added to the building.
Yes.
Is that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
to answer Arthur's question, number 1 could be a policy, 2, 3, and 4 would require a code amendment.
Yeah.
Thanks, that was
Yeah.
fast.
Even in number 2 says, there is a requirement right now on the site plan to list the trees.
I
It
asked
says,
Doug about that, and he
it says right there on the form. When you see the form, one of the check marks is the list of trees. Look, that's why I said, do we have the latest form and the latest building permit? It says
Right.
on the building permit.
I don't think I mean, maybe he's just not seeing it, maybe we're not enforcing it, or it hasn't been done.
Well,
in the
that's the
past.
thing, it hasn't been
When I
enforced.
asked him, I said, "Well, is it on?" He said, I don't think.
Because I had asked Alan Beal about that too. And I said, it's on the building permit. He said, some do, some don't.
For a big project where it's a knockdown and a new building, the Cass Engineering's doing, they'll include all the trees.
They'll mark the trees.
Yeah,
They mark location, but not necessarily species, et cetera.
not
No,
species,
just
but
location.
probably, they may indicate size. I'd have to
But
get
then,
that.
see, this was and this is something to discuss,
Yeah.
the pros and cons of it. When we tried to look at what was happening under construction, and we saw on the building permit, it says list of trees, and Mike Zielinski got out, just a random selection of 10 building plans, and 1 or 2 he saw this, and the rest wasn't. He said, I have no idea what happened on these properties, because there's no information here. So that was the purpose of putting this in. So it was just to establish whether people are wantonly cutting down big ones or not. We could not go to the building plans to get that information.
Is there a recourse for if someone cut down trees or doesn't list all the trees? And how much of an administrative cost increase?
Well, that's the thing. We are not requiring any kind of approval process or license for cutting down. But proposal number 2 is simply what's going on. It's just a list. Proposal number 3 is, again, no license, no permission, no request, do what you want, but plant a tree at the end.
And if you don't, then we hold the bond, or what happens?
It would be required, unless they can argue, this would be the variance procedure. This would be, they'd have to be able to argue why it's not feasible. And as Paul says, in many cases, it will not be feasible. We recognize that.
I did discuss this with Doug and with Wayne. We all agreed that none of us have the ability to verify any of this stuff. It would have to be the arborist. So really, it's.
Right.
No, you couldn't
No,
verify the
it's-
location.
Yeah, but was
Yeah.
it the species of tree that
Right.
was supposed to be subsidized or,
Right.
or replaced or whatever? No.
So I think that's one of the details, like, Arthur and I
Right.
talked about this over the phone, it's okay, we're gonna require location marking, small, medium, large tree, and if we define that, that may be something that we could expect a builder to do, and, they could verify, but if we're then expecting builder to do a small, medium, or resident who's adding an addition to their home, whatever, then we'd have to engage Paul to come in and verify what they actually put on their plan was true, because,
Let me say that as a little bit of background, the person who really insisted on proposals 3 and 4 was the developer on our committee, Ed Novak. And his point was that when residents are doing rebuilding and remodeling, they have the value of the trees in mind, as Paul was suggesting. When developers come in, they have a different set of incentives and objectives. They're to make their job easy. And that's when the backhoe comes in and levels the property. And
That's correct, and they plant bonsai trees instead.
as replacements. And so his view as a developer is that residents have the values that we treasure. Developers have a completely different set of values, and we were trying to come up with a delineation, some kind of a differentiation. How do you separate out a developer from a kind of a smaller scale project?
And the attorney goes, can't do it.
Right. No, you can't do it. Well, so this is why we're saying if it requires a building permit and if it's over a certain number of square feet.
But then it could be a
resident, of course, it can't.
Bungalow.
It's an imperfect differentiator. Okay.
I get it.
I suggest reconsidering this at a next meeting. This is partly educational.
Right.
But think about it. Think about so you have real substantial questions.
But I think we did. I mean, we have substantial questions about how you're going to word them to have an exception of if we're going to have this introduced into the building code and we're going to do variance. I mean, that's a big expense. I mean, that's for the village.
Right. In fact, we're conscious of that, and we're trying to think of, is there a mechanism, a kind of a mini variance sort of argument that could be made, where a builder could say, here's the rationale, I can't build a tree. There is the what do you call it, not the rain gutters.
Dry wells.
The dry wells, and
Is there an
everything.
administrative appeals office here in the Village of Martin Station? Is that what
No, but for
Yes.
your consideration,
Yeah.
what Montgomery County does is state, if you require a sediment control permit, which means you're disturbing 5,000 square feet or more,
You have to
you've
plant
got to
6
replace
trees.
shade trees. Each tree has to have 400 or 450 square feet of growing area. If you don't have that available because you've got rain tanks or lack of space, instead of requesting a variance, you can pay a fee, and the fee is used for reforestation elsewhere.
And that's a stiff fee, too.
Do you know what it is?
And they require, what, 2 or 3 trees?
3 to 1.
3 to 1.
I believe it is. I don't know what the fee is.
Yeah.
At one time, I remember.
Yeah, it was several $1,000s.
$1,000?
Yeah,
Oh,
per
I
property.
didn't think it was that high.
Yeah.
Oh, times 3.
Yeah, for each tree. It's, if you take on 1 tree, you have to replace by 3. So if you take, that's 6 trees that either you pay a fine for or pay to.
That could be something to consider. Instead of giving a variance, you could give that option. But then the question is there really room elsewhere in the village for installation of trees? And
Well, the right of way. It could go into the right of way.
Who could fund the subsidy
It
program?
could fund the subsidies. There's a,
Well, so I think, I would also ask just Tori, is there, if you're thinking about Paul's time, I also want you to think about your time.
Right.
And that's,
right.
we ran into this with the building codes, we thought, once it's written, it'll be very clear and everything's, but how much time do you spend following up on this?
Well, I mean, it's all in the details, but I mean, adding the species and planned outcomes in proposal 2, to me, most of the burden is on the homeowner or the architect adding that aspect. That's not something that's gonna be, unless you want us to verify those species, in which case,
Then the arborist has to.
it has to be the arborist
But
time
then you
that we're
have
gonna
to
bring
manage
in.
Paul, you have to
Adding
manage.
something that we can't check
Um,
on.
Well, I would
Yeah, and
say
then-
section 5 did that. They had a permit, but nobody checked.
But then, yeah, it's sort of, it would be nice, then they're nothing but guidelines.
Right.
And, that's, if, do we want to start out with guidelines and see whether people participate in the program?
Ron, what do we have to do for a pilot program? Can we just?
You mean this for the,
Can we just run a pilot?
Sure.
Can we call it a pilot?
yes, yeah, it can be a policy that has a sunset provision or a maximum budget amount.
well, which are we talking about?
Number 1.
Number 1 or the other? Okay.
I mean, number 1 is almost but number 1 will take more work than number 2 for the office.
Not necessarily.
Depends. depends.
gonna
Not
write
a lot,
form.
though.
She's
It,
gonna
Yeah,
it,
there's
it
there'll be
does,
a form.
it would,
Be
well, there's the
coordinating.
form, and then there's processing the reimbursements with the accountant.
Yeah,
And there's coordinating, unless we're telling all the residents, you're directly gonna call.
no, it would be coordinated through here,
Then.
It would be.
It would have to be,
Yeah.
that's
yeah.
schedules, locations, I mean, that's huge.
Mhm.
If you have 100 people who all of a sudden say, we wanna do this, then Tori's now scheduling.
Well-
Well, we
I
would,
mean, you could
we would
limit
have
it
a
with
budget
the
to begin
amount of
with.
the-
When the budget
Yeah.
is ended,
If there's
that's
money
it.
for 25 trees,
Right.
then
Right,
we
yeah,
figure, I don't know,
right.
an hour per tree
I would say
request,
less than
2 hour per tree, I don't know, I'd have to think about it.
I think this could use a little more detail.
Okay.
Do you sort of see where we're going
Oh,
with
yes, yeah,
budget? And how, I like this idea of, well, I don't like the idea of putting it into building codes, but, okay, we have to move on.
Okay,
Arthur, I'm happy to talk through, I mean, you and I talked about some of my questions before,
Right.
so that it helps all three of them.
Just for some relief, Keith, can you give us a brief weather report? Just so that we.
All good.
Thank
Oh,
you.
good. What's El Nino gonna do to us?
It's gonna give us a mild winter here.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
And we're talking about 70 degrees in all 3 winter months.
Really?
We've had an abundance of those in November, a record number so far. Thanksgiving is gonna be 60 or better. That's a week from today. So contrary to what you might be hearing from other sources, stick with me, okay? It's gonna be a mild winter. Snowfall's gonna be below normal, and what snow we get is not gonna stick around. It's not gonna be anything like the last 2 winters. I think you're gonna like it a lot. Thank me come the spring.
That's right.
Okay.
I'll take my news from Timberland anyway.
Everybody have a good night. Paul's eating up all the candy over here. Let's go to Halloween cake.
Thanks, Keith.
Okay.
But I would like to thank you for the Arborist Full Employment Act.
Okay.
All of this all rolled into the survey discussion and what trees we have. I mean, Paul just gave us a list of all the trees that are in the right of way. We just need to match this list up with what their locations are.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Which I think, Arthur, that could address some of the workload questions, you know, in general. Just getting the data collected.
When you say survey, Tiffany's talking about the ArcGIS survey on the, yeah.
Okay, are we ready to move on to
Yeah.
introductions of ordinances?
Yes. Just so, we have talked about this for at least 3 or
Yes.
4 meetings. This is, you know, people have been jotting down notes for 5 to 10 years on things that need to be clarified in the code, as questions have arisen just generally operationally, as changes have been made in the state. This amendment that we're introducing tonight is a compilation of all of those notes to the best of our ability. I think Ron, you know, did a great job, and I appreciate the red line version here, so that when you read what's in front of you, and when we put it up for residents to read it, they're reading what it will actually read like. No one has to compare things
Right, right.
anymore. It is what it's going to look like.
Right.
And you know, the idea, we don't have 30 days between now and our next meeting, but I think that's a good thing, because people are busy, it's holiday time, but getting this posted and talking about it as much as we can, so that people can read it, so early next year we can act on it.
Right.
Is the goal that we had previously discussed.
So what do we need? Do we need a motion to introduce?
That's correct.
Was there anything else you want to do to
Do you want to sit over here? So
These
we
are
can-
all the things that we've already talked about.
Right.
Yeah, so the
Ad
only
nauseam.
difference between this version and the last version we looked at is the implementation of the staff recommendations that were discussed at the
Oh,
last meeting.
right.
They've been added. And
Okay.
real quickly, that means a permit will only be required for buildings and their appurtenances versus all structures.
Okay.
And
Are fences out?
yes,
Where did we land on the retaining walls and terraces?
that, yeah, terraces are out under this draft. The only potential open issue is whether you were happy with the staff recommendation for driveways, or if there was gonna be further discussion as to whether.
Yeah, where is that? We didn't get a copy of this. Was this distributed before?
A while ago, Ron sent it to all of us.
I emailed it.
This came weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay, I
No,
didn't put it into my
October
meeting
23rd
folder.
maybe.
Right, okay.
And again, I wanna stress, I'm so thankful, it's all here, we don't have to
Right.
compare anything, just you get to read what's there.
So the driveway
So
issue.
where's the driveway, what
At
section
the
is that?
bottom of page 25. That issue is how driveway width is measured.
Right.
So as the draft is currently written, driveway width would only include adjoining surface areas if they were the same material of the driveway.
Same
So if
material,
you've got
right.
an asphalt
Right.
walkway right next to your
Right.
asphalt driveway, the width is combined. But if you've got a
Right.
flagstone walkway,
Right,
it's
got
not
it.
included in the width.
Okay,
That's one alternative, and we discussed the
Okay.
other alternative at the
Right.
last meeting.
So I think this reflects the discussions we've had
Wait,
over the.
the
past
30 minutes of discussion on driveways last time, right?
Right.
You know what?
We- It's a phrase.
It's 10 years of building up to collecting all those amendments for the code, 30
Right.
minutes on driveways.
Right.
The way it's written, it still could be 20 feet wide. So someone could claim the 10 feet as their walkway.
Yes, except it's limited by the 30%, effectively limited by the 30% non-vegetative
Coverage.
surface.
Right.
But if a house is far set back,
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you could
He wants a
include a
geometry
maximum
problem.
in there to address that issue.
would we be willing to do that?
Like a
To a
30.
maximum of,
3 feet, 36 inches for the sidewalk,
Adjoining.
appended to the
And if it's
10
wider than
feet,
that, then it has
yeah.
to be separated from the driveway. So for example, if you need
more than
it to be
13
wide
feet.
enough for like a wheelchair or whatever, right? Then it has to.
But I think 36 inches is wide enough for a wheelchair.
Is ADA
Well,
compliant?
there is
36 inches?
yeah, you have to check if that's.
I forget what Doug said at the last meeting.
Well, it
I
was
can call him.
36.
Let me,
Want me to call him
let
right
me
now?
Google it.
I'm pretty sure it was 36 in the context of the
I did not
stoop.
re-listen to that part of it.
Mhm. That sounds right to me
Did you
too,
re-listen
but I
to
can
some
call
parts
him.
of
Oh,
it?
I did.
Yeah.
Let me see if I wrote it down.
We can go on while I'm Googling it.
If we have to amend it, then we need to amend it now before we introduce it, that's.
Right.
But because the hearing won't be until January,
But I think it's good for us to amend it so that what's posted on the website is,
Fine,
yeah, so that we give people
Okay.
at least a couple months to look at it, since we're going over the holidays. Arthur, what's up?
We've been discussing this now, but, so what's the additional review?
like-
We're just introducing it. We never actually,
Oh,
we
we
talked
never
about
act-
introducing it a million times, but we've.
No, so the clock hasn't started
no,
ticking,
No clock.
okay.
So that's why if we introduce tonight, once we resolve this last issue, then we wanna give an extensive clock since we have to wait the 30 days, we have to, factor in holidays, so.
I think that we're protected by the non-vegetative surface issue. And it would be really hard to say that a sidewalk adjoining a driveway cannot exceed 3 feet in width. I mean, it doesn't, if people want to cover their whole yard with concrete, there's, I don't think we should necessarily stand in the way.
Well, we
In
do,
spite of your
we do have the maximum covered
Right, the
area.
vegetative, and then, because you can't exceed 35%.
30, I think.
30%?
Yeah.
That, I think that's,
yeah.
that protects us enough. You're not comfortable with that? He says, speaking to.
sorry, I was looking
No,
at it.
I know.
I was trying to figure out if it's 5 feet or less than that. But if we have enough people to be comfortable with it, then it doesn't really matter, right?
Okay,
30%.
Move on.
30%
Yeah.
vegetative,
Yeah.
non-vegetative.
I-
So that's a pretty low number. I mean, that's enough to, it seems to me, corral
Yeah.
any excessive.
Yeah, you're not gonna have any
wide sidewalk.
helicopter landing pads.
Right. Are you, okay, all
Let's-
those in favor of
So I
that?
move to introduce.
Right, as is?
As is.
Okay.
As drafted, do I need to read all of it?
No.
Just want to make sure. The compilation amendment, anybody?
Okay, second?
Second,
Susan, second, all in favor?
aye.
Opposed?
The public hearing will be in
January.
January, and I'll go ahead and send a copy to Montgomery County
Okay,
for its comments.
okay.
So why does this have to go to Montgomery County?
Only because it involves building regulations, and under the Regional District Act, because the county has zoning authority, they have the right to comment
Oh.
on our building regulations.
Do you have any concerns about the county?
No, it's very rare that we actually get comments.
Right.
I think I've gotten comments maybe twice in 9 years
Huh.
for all my different towns.
So just to make a point on the 30% thing, this is gonna be quick. So the way that my old house was built, it was 50 feet recessed and 50-foot wide
Right.
lot. I could have a 16-foot wide driveway that way. By
With
30%
30%
rule,
non-vegetative.
yes.
No, because you still have the 10-foot driveway limitation. You'd have to have a 6-foot
6 foot
different
wide.
surface
Fine,
material. Yes.
fine, but visually, I could still have
Yes.
16 feet covered if it was just the driveway. Just so that we're
Right.
clear that that
Right.
is possible in our village, okay?
Right.
So if
Yes.
someone had a wider lot, it could be even more than that.
But what happened, yes, but then they can't have anything else. I mean, it includes all of the sidewalk steps, you know, so it is limiting.
Includes the front porch, I believe, right?
Yeah.
The stoop.
So you can't put any driveway in with that big front porch. No.
Well, I'm trying to pull driveway out, but,
Okay, moving on to streetlights.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Steve, are you awake?
Very much.
Okay.
So since last meeting, where we discussed the proposal of how to proceed with digesting all the information that we have gotten over the years, we have received pricing now from Scott Watson, who is our lighting consultant. And his recommendations, he did something similar, summarizing the previous history, recent work.
Do we have copies? We didn't get copies of that.
It's in the
did we?
booklet.
It's in your book.
Right
Did we?
here, isn't it, Debbie?
And
He
the
didn't
cost
send
is
it
still-
till, like, last night.
Oh, oh.
Yeah.
Could you email this?
I can, sure.
Because
It's
so we
in your
can.
email, I forwarded.
Oh,
it.
did you?
Yes,
Oh,
you'll
okay,
have
because
it.
I haven't seen it. Okay.
So,
The summary page is the first one.
Yeah, yeah.
so in his recommendation, again, he states that he thinks that the induction lights that are on Georgia Street, so right across from Bradley Brookville intersection, right, in section 3, are his preference because they're warmer and they look most like the old lights that we have in the village. They would look the same, well, closer to what we have, and the light distribution is more even. However, as we discussed last time too, they're gonna, they may stop being, their production has been stopped by the company that has been
Had
producing them in the past.
But
There's still enough supply, and Pepco is still replacing them, and they are, their life expectancy is 20 years. So in 20 years, we could assess whether they're still, it's a viable solution on the market, or we could then retrofit them.
no, I
Or
checked into
that-
that.
Okay.
There are Chinese companies galore making these things. The standard companies, thing with Philips.
That's just the one
Ju-
that
Right,
stopped
but,
producing it, but there's
yeah,
others,
but there are a
yes.
lot of other companies making this stuff now.
Yes, and Pepco is actually supporting them, so if we were to choose this induction option, then we could pay them to, maintain these lights, and they would have to replace them if they go out.
Mhm.
Okay, so anyway, so there's induction, there's LEDs. To install induction lights, throughout the village would cost $260,000. To install LED lights would cost $275,000. In addition, Scott is recommending that we add 7 additional lights in the darkest spots in the village, which would cost extra $40,000. So that brings it to $300,000 and $315,000. The maintenance cost is a second component to consider.
Yeah.
Currently, we pay about $8,000 per year on our existing lighting system. The newer lights, in the case of induction, it's $4,400 per year, so it's actually almost half the price.
Yeah.
And LEDs are slightly more at $8,600.
That's what I didn't understand.
Well, the reason
it?
for that is
Yeah.
that induction lights seem to be more reliable. So less replacements are needed for whatever reason, because LEDs are a newer technology. Scott believes that, in 20 years we may be in a place where there are better lights. But for now, he still feels that induction lights are better. They're installed in Garrett Park, they're installed in Chevy Chase View. And again, the closest one is on Georgia Street for people to go see. So anyway, his recommendation is to assess and let him know. I'm recommending that we proceed as we discussed last time, which is we'll write up the information about the lighting options, open the survey to residents for 1 week with the map of where the lights are located so they can look and see. We have 2 LED lights, by the way, on Bradley Lane, so residents could see what LEDs look like, could see what the induction light looks like. Respond or not respond to the survey, it's up to them, but then we take the information that we have, feedback from residents for whatever we receive, make a decision on just the guts of the lighting fixture, and the following month, so in January, we're looking at the aesthetic look of the fixture. So does it have a skirt, what color the skirt is, things like that. There's not that many options. But I want to separate the two so that we don't get mixed up and bogged down by 2 different decision paths.
Right.
So in January, again, open up a quick survey for a week. These are our options. People can respond, not respond, and then we can make the final decision in January.
Excuse me.
We'll take comments at the end again. Thank you.
So that's
We
my
have to sort of-
recommendation. Yeah.
Okay.
Katja, could you get also the, for comparisons, you said Chevy Chase View and, who else, Somerset? Garrett Park. To kind of get the, where they are. I'd like to go see, check, because what we have now are just like single lights.
Right, so
There
Garrett Park
we have
and
the whole
Chevy Chase
committee.
is fully
Fully.
on induction lights. And Scott says that, storms take them out occasionally, but, in the last year, 2 were taken out in Garrett Park or something. So it's not very, prevalent problem. And they don't burn out. I mean, they last 20 years. So the costs that I've provided here in the summary of $4,400 per year and $8,000, that includes Pepco replacements. If we chose not to use Pepco for replacements, it's less. It's like $1,000 for induction and $4,000 for LEDs. But then we would have to go out and
Contract
someone else to replace the lights. So if they're no longer produced, that becomes our problem. So if we went with induction, I would recommend just
Staying
giving
with
that to
Pepco.
Pepco, so we don't have to worry about that.
I'd like to see the Scott's cost figures behind this.
It's, again, it's in the backup right behind. So what you're looking at on Scott's, just so that, save the time.
Oh, here's his maintenance
So
cost.
you're looking at options
Okay.
C and C1 and D and D1. C being induction, Pepco maintained, C1 being induction, village maintained, D, LED, Pepco maintained, and D1 is LED, village maintained. So you can see from the cost that LEDs are more expensive to maintain, which is probably because they go out somehow more often.
Yeah, that's where I'd like to see the backup.
I think just, Katja did an amazing job of summarizing this,
Yes.
and I appreciate it getting into a succinct place.
Yes.
Reading Scott's light replacement, just since I'm seeing it, I saw it a little bit earlier, but I didn't have time to look at it today.
some of this, again, goes back to why we're doing this 1 week of open, close, go look at them. Because, you know, his concerns are they're too blue or they're too glarish, but there's technical measurement versus personal experience. So I think it's a good thing that we're providing, you know, here are the options, here's the information that's pertinent to the options. Go look at them in a very defined period of time, and then we're gonna move on.
So we're gonna draw residents' attentions to the pros and cons of each light, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then
I
they can make that
wouldn't-
determination.
You go in blind, literally.
Yeah, I would let them, I would give them the pros and cons of mathematics. But I wouldn't, I mean, much of this commentary here is personal preference. I think this is too cool. I think it's too blue. Like, that's a personal preference.
And I think if we give people a street, for instance, like Franklin Street and Chevy Chase View, because it'll help them find Chevy Chase View, where the whole street is lighted by induction lighting. So you're not seeing what one light looks like.
Yeah,
You
looking at
see-
one light, I find, is
you see what the
difficult to
whole
evaluate.
You could
So we
go
have to do the
to,
same thing for LEDs though. If we
Yeah,
send
do we
people
have
to-
any examples of any local
So the
communities
problem with
installing
LEDs is
LEDs?
that usually so there's plenty of places that have LEDs
Yeah.
throughout, so Chevy Chase DC has LEDs, but they generally have wider streets.
So
And
they'll
if they
have a
have wider
different,
streets, they need brighter lights.
right,
So we don't have necessarily a municipality that is currently on LEDs that are lower wattage with narrow streets.
I'm wondering if there are some, so you say Chevy Chase DC does,
It does, but it's wider streets.
but
So
there
they're
must be some
100
side
watts, 70
streets,
What about
There's
some
70
smaller
watts.
streets?
McKinley or one of those relatively narrow
Yeah, I was
streets?
trying to
They
think
They
of
would still
some,
be on 70 watts or 100 watts. So there would just be brighter lit, right, because they're more,
but it's all LED.
yes, I
Yeah.
believe that Chevy Chase DC
Okay.
switched to all LED.
So would that give, using Scott's methodology, does that still give you the feel for the type of
well,
light?
you'll get the quality of the light, but they're probably gonna be a little bit higher, a little bit brighter.
Yeah, I mean, again, in the survey language, we would highlight all the areas, and this is something that I was gonna draft it, circulate it, we would
Yeah.
all get buy-in and then
Okay.
submit it to residents.
We should take a
Okay.
drive around, like we did with the Chevy Chase.
But I'd like to not, postpone this for another few months, so.
No, agreed.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I agree, I agree.
I like the timeline.
We generally take, I'm sorry, in order for the council to meet, we generally don't take comments except at the beginning and at the end, obviously with exceptions, with that tree thing that went on.
No, just what the village manager mentioned, the identification of dark spots
Right,
in the village. I think that's very important.
and that's been done
That's been done.
by the lighting consultant.
Well, I'm not the village manager, but yes, that has been done, and he recommends that 7 additional lights are placed where the poles are the farthest apart.
Yes.
So that would bring our total to just about over 80 lights, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And that list has been.
Yeah, so that work has been done, because the streetlight work has been going on for a long time.
I don't wanna.
Right.
Can we obtain the list of dark spots?
Or the 7, where is he proposing the 7
Hopefully
additional?
Tori can find it.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you. Okay, so what do we need, a motion to move on?
I don't think, do we need a motion?
No, I don't
we
think
need
so.
a motion.
Okay,
As long
yes.
as you're all on.
Okay,
We're just committing to
keep
having
moving.
a survey.
Okay, so in the
ready to
next
go.
2 weeks, I will send you a draft of what I'm proposing the survey to be.
Okay,
And hopefully over email, we can agree and push it out before the December meeting. Okay? Good? Okay.
That's great.
Thank you.
now you get to do financials.
Oh, I thought I was done. Okay.
No,
So in October, we actually had we have more income than we had expenses, which hasn't been the case over the last couple of months.
right,
Exceeded by $45,000.
That's the big
Main
one.
drivers were that we had almost $61,000 in disbursements from real property tax, $16,000 from highway users tax, and almost $5,000 from personal income tax. standard expenses that we have every month. In addition to that, we also incurred $5,300 in building review and permit fees. We did not incur any legal fees.
Okay, I think that is.
That's coming in.
Billed for.
No,
Well,
we,
the check got
That's actually,
lost.
that's what I said. We did
There's
not
a
Oh,
bill
the check
for
got
any.
lost?
The check got
we had to put a
lost.
stop order on it and order a new check.
We've had 2 checks that have been,
One to Pepco in August.
that have
It was
gone.
mailed.
Where are
in
you
August.
mailing them from? Downstairs?
Well, the one to Ron was mailed from the Chevy Chase post office.
Oh, really?
Funny, I haven't received 2 checks from a month prior. I got
Really?
one-
Interesting. And then Devin mailed one to Pepco in August that Pepco never got. We had to cancel that one too. I don't know where she
I
mailed
got a
that
piece
one.
of mail
but-
that was stamped from February 25th, 2 weeks ago.
From
Wow.
February?
All right, so.
Okay,
I would-
so
I-
anyway,
let us
I fully
thank
expect
Ron
that
for
we'll
his
see
patience, by the
those
way.
checks,
Ron's gone.
He
He
goes-
left.
expenses hit
Okay.
next month.
Right.
But he was patient.
Yes.
However, we're still in good health.
Well, I mean, if
Tell-
we're not getting paid,
I
that's
think
what I
one thing
mean.
that we're.
Oh, and tell
we're-
Wayne to send in the
Wait,
bills.
come on, we're,
I have two things I wanted to note. We're gonna have a lot more, information on actual expenses incurred, leading up to, this first 6 months. So we had Doug's expenses, Ron's expenses.
Oh, thank you very much.
And I think that would lead to, and Richard knows the budget schedule better than I do, but really, since we're gonna have to do a budget amendment at some point, getting ahead of that as early as possible so that we can say, all right, this is what's going up, this is what's going down.
So say that again, so legal and building.
Legal and building are gonna be,
Well,
much
Dan Baden and I had a preliminary conversation about this, because that is right, we have to be ahead of it, we're not supposed to,
spend money we haven't a lot
Correct.
allocated.
and the categories that he and I discussed were leaf bag expenditures, street cleaning fees, legal fees, and building review and permitting fees.
Okay.
So he and I have started a discussion about what, if we were going to do a budget amendment, what would we suggest would be a reasonable?
And Wayne is caught up with the last fiscal year.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, no, every bill, we
But-
dropped dead, Dan Baden and I,
I
because
know.
of the auditors had a
For
drop
the auditor, I know,
dead-
they had, so I saw
Yes.
he came in with his
and
timesheet.
Alan Beal
But-
too.
but
Oh,
Tori,
I saw there was one for Alan, but there was, how's Wayne doing now? I mean, is he
He's-
doing a lot now?
He
or-
has fallen behind again in billing.
But Bill, but what about his actual work? Is his work going on like the
He's-
rate as the previous earlier rates?
Yeah, I mean,
or
he's
not?
doing everything we've always done.
Okay, so there's no
No,
surprises?
no, there's no surprises.
Okay.
Okay, we need a motion to accept the financial reports as presented.
Move to accept financial
Second.
report,
Second.
treasurer's report,
Treasurer's report. Second?
second. She can't second, can she second? it?
Sure, anybody can, I'll second it.
Okay,
Okay,
aye,
all in favor, aye,
Aye.
opposed, okay. Managers report.
It's under 10, tab 10. All right, so let's see, starting with administrative matters, we have staffing, Beth Boa, our
Right.
assistant manager.
Well,
started-
You're hiding behind her. I knew you were there before, but.
And I would also add that she has applied to be a notary now.
And I
Oh.
was
Before too long.
accepted.
Oh, you got
Oh.
it? Okay, when do
It
you get
involves
your
the governor,
stamp?
apparently.
When you get your
Get
stamp?
my commission at the county.
Oh,
Yes, so that should make things easier for,
oh,
That's nice,
Right of
thank you for
yes.
doing that.
Sure.
oh, I can come here then when I need to. What do I need?
Okay, moving on.
State
Okay.
archives.
The archives.
Returned our records retention and disposal schedule with comments. We made changes
Right.
and we sent it back. We're now awaiting their review of the
Comments.
subsequent.
I think
And
the
then-
comments were very minimal, so I'm
Yeah, they
proud
were.
of us
Yeah.
for moving on.
Yeah,
Okay, website. We had a very productive conference call with Brian Rains at Calvert Design. We updated a number of general items about the site. We learned how to use pages and menus more effectively, and this one's interesting. We learned how to scan the website for broken links, and when Beth ran that scan,
Whoa.
she got
How many
22 pages.
of links? Yeah,
oh,
right.
I
Yeah.
printed
Right.
them out.
Do we have any
Now-
idea why that happened?
But they will break over time, and he gave us some tips for avoiding that by including child pages. That way, every time, if you put in a link and then it gets overtaken by some other, and you forget that you had buried this link in the
Right.
sub-menu
Yeah.
of the fourth page,
Yeah,
then over time they start to break.
Oh.
And you don't even realize they're broken unless you
Right.
do a regular
regular check like
report
that.
like Beth ran.
Wow.
But if you bury them in with child pages instead, then they don't get lost as easily.
I don't know
This
what a
is-
child page
it's-
is, but don't explain it now.
The point is, it was a great conversation.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
now we learned this week that because of the question about recycling on the listserv,
Yes.
that our recycling stuff on the website needs to be updated to
Oh,
represent
what they're actually doing?
what waste management's current guidelines are.
Oh,
That's on our to-do list. And
okay.
you pointed out
Yeah,
that one of the links to the building permit applications, it worked, but to an old document.
yeah.
Exactly. This is one where it's not going to show up on the
Oh,
report, right?
so the
Because-
link worked.
But it linked to an old version of, because the media
Yeah.
library had both the old version and the new version in different places.
Oh. Yeah.
Okay.
So this was a good conversation with Brian.
It was.
This contract is one that we, haven't looked at, but it may need to be something that's looked at in the year.
He sent detail, by the way, about your question
So I think
to Beth and I.
So,
in the coming year, just as you guys are working through this, please keep that in your mind.
yeah,
Okay.
after they finally get it working, it will change.
Okay, we are about the RFP for lawn and landscaping. We're in negotiations with Native Earth for lawn and landscaping. We were almost done. And then we discovered this week, very late in the process, after reviewing the scope of services, that there had been a misunderstanding with Native Earth about the RFP. And the proposal which they submitted to us had proposed prices for just one round of doing everything. Whereas we had interpreted it to be the whole year. And she's like, I am so sorry, but it's miscommunication. I must have misread it. I'm going to resubmit to you what my costs would be. And we may well just need to go with our second choice. We're that. Yeah.
So can we have when do you wanna have this
Well,
drop dead
I
done?
wanted, if we're gonna plant anything, it needs to really be planted in the fall, because we're talking about planting things where we have no water source. If you plant things in the spring, you need a water source, but if you plant them in the fall, you have a good chance of them never needing to be watered. If we wanna plant bulbs, it all needs to be done, in the next month. Okay? And she was we were all ready to go, and that's when she called me and it was like, yeah. That was unfortunate, but I think.
So did it take their cost way up over the
Oh, yeah.
second?
Well, we haven't gotten her revision
Yeah,
back.
but it's gonna probably be
See,
four
part
times.
Part of the reason I started to do that spreadsheet before was like, if somebody said, well, this is what I'm gonna spend in the year. Someone else would say in the season. Well, did they mean the growing season of like March
Right.
to November, or did
Right.
they mean the spring season, the summer season, and the fall season? There are many seasons in the year.
Right.
This is where comparing apples and oranges, so anyway.
Okay.
Safety and police, I don't really need to go over that with you.
So
Utilities.
let me just confirm, but you
Yes.
think next meeting, done? December council meeting, we
I
will have a
hope,
contract?
I hope so. I thought she'd already have gotten back to me with her new price. We're gonna have to look at the price. If the price is acceptable, I like her. She's good. She knows what she's doing. But if her price is astronomical, then no.
So you have to put some heat on her to get it in here. To
She
get her price.
herself would like to start immediately.
Well-
It's just that when we were going over the final, she called me back and said,
Well, but if she has to redo that price, she should have it into you. I mean, it shouldn't take her.
no, I don't think it'll
I
take
mean,
too long.
I wouldn't think, so, okay. Utilities?
WSSC
Yeah.
is the story here. The water main and relocation replacement is pending. The latest estimate as of yesterday was that they will not start until after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
But they are marking it
The
with
markings are
municipality,
out there.
yes. They may
Yeah.
do some saw cuts in the asphalt, but they're
Okay.
not gonna excavate anything till after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Did
Yeah.
the parking issue get resolved with them?
No.
I'll
So what
talk about that
happened
after
on
the
Wednesday
meeting.
morning was that the contractor emailed me and WSSC and said, if we can't park our stuff on the street, we can't do this job. We didn't bid it like this. I called WSSC. I'm like, what's up? They said, if they didn't make arrangements for how they were gonna park their stuff before they bid it, not your problem. Okay, but then I'm making more calls, and it turns out really, it's not that unusual to park the stuff on the street. It just so happens that we have a little municipality with narrow streets. I can't offer them a park. I can't offer them a public parking lot.
I have a thought on this, so let's
Okay,
talk about it after this.
so here's the counter proposal. After talking it through with the contractor, he's like, in discussing it, we're like, well, what if we parked 2 vehicles on Melville at all times? Because that's a wider street, and the other on adjacent to wherever the project is.
The
In
other
other words,
two.
Right, so like, the project's moving its way down Bradley, and now we get to the weekend, they park 2 things adjacent to that project and 2 things on Melville. Because he said I probably need 4, the equivalent of 4 parking spaces. Then the next weekend, it's now in a different part of Bradley, adjacent to that, and it goes back to the part of Melville. So Melville's the constant, unfortunately, they're always gonna be burdened, but they have more parking, I've observed. And everybody else, it's a shared pain, because it's gonna move adjacent to, so that was sort of the.
And it's also, the streets are gonna be torn up there, so it's not like, gonna be like, these are gonna be areas of high traffic or movement or parking. It's gonna be construction.
Well, but I mean, the people at the dead end of Raymond still have to get out every day.
Right.
So.
Yeah, they're gonna have to get out, so there has to be, there's gonna be passage.
They assured us that they will always be able to have passage.
Yeah.
This will never block a school bus, this will never block first responders.
Right.
There may be a moment
When they're
where
backing
they've
up.
got a little skidder loader
Right.
full of gravel and
Yeah.
1 miles an hour, it's
Right.
going, so you might have to take a break in your car, but the flagger's gonna be there or something, and then you
Yeah.
go through. It's not ever going to be like this street is blocked off, go
Right.
around.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
News. They also.
How's that possible? So that when they just lay the tar, you can't
Because
drive
it's
it right
it's
away.
because the street, well, if the street is 26 feet wide, they're only going to block 13 feet. They're always going to leave a
Because
lane,
they're
but then you can't have
thing is,
parking
they're
on the other
excavating
side,
along
right?
there.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
there's gonna be a pit.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on.
We put in a formal request to have the Pepco had replaced streetlight poles and left the holes there.
Oh.
You may have noticed paint
Right.
on the street up at the corner of Shepherd and Brookville.
Yes.
They're moving forward on that request that we put in. That's good news.
Yeah.
Street cleaning was completed in late October.
We got a lot of compliments for that.
Yes, we did. The catchment basins will be, street cleaning will happen again in December. It is tentatively scheduled for mid-December, weather permitting, assuming all leaves are off trees. And the catchment basins will also be done in December. They were not done in October. And we'll use the survey map to.
How did we do on the estimate, his cost estimate for that? Is he higher or lower?
It costs, oh, I know what I can do. No. It's not specific bill. It was something like $6,000.
Okay, it's about the same. All
Yeah.
right, keep going.
All right. We didn't have any streetlight outages as trees. We talked about pavement. November 6th, we met with Pavement Corporation to discuss short-term and long-term pavement improvements to our sidewalks, curbs, and streets. We're immediately moving forward to get tripping hazards on Melville taken care of and another list of items. And then, but Pavement Corporation was also there to talk about like the bigger picture. Their point is really, ideally one should have a schedule of maintenance that spans years. It shouldn't just be ad hoc, like I see a pothole, I'm gonna fix it. Because if you have a scheduled, say, asphalt sealant every 1 or 2 years, it will significantly extend the total life of your asphalt, saving you money over time. So that, I don't believe we have a schedule like that
Yeah.
in place.
Well,
And-
the problem has been, whether we had one or not, the streets have been torn up.
Right, okay, so this
And
is
so-
the other piece of all of this. So, I'm moving forward with getting the concrete repairs, like on the tripping hazards
Right.
in Melville, taken care of. Pavement Corporation's getting
What's
us
on
an
the clock?
estimate. Chamberlain Construction gave us an estimate, but then it turned out that we need to back out the Pepco, things that Pepco's gonna fix for us instead. And anything on Brookville Road needs to be backed out because of state highway issues. He's gonna reissue the estimate to us, but that preliminary estimate was $9,600, it's
Oh.
not.
So for, to doing what, for doing
The
what?
short-term concrete repairs, which we'd sent
Okay,
him a
right,
list of,
right,
okay?
that's Chamberlain.
The
yeah.
larger issue is about repaving
Mm-hmm,
the north end, which was torn up years ago,
mm-hmm,
and now negotiating for the south end.
mm-hmm.
WSSC said to me, one of the contract managers said something about, we paid you all this money and you're just sitting on it. And I said, I don't believe that's the case. So I researched this with Dan Baden. No, we have not gotten any money from WSSC. So I went to the next guy above him and said, Corey, I think there's a misunderstanding here, but we've gotten neither pavement nor money to do the paving. And he said they are going to be moving forward with figuring this out for us, and we're having a meeting early next week. Interestingly, today, I was at the municipal manager's annual meeting with Montgomery County. And we went around the room and they asked, the county chief administrative officer asked, what are the issues before us? And I mentioned WSSC, and it turns out that WSSC is getting a new general manager, 2 new commissioners, and there's been extensive issues with WSSC about communication. Communication within WSSC between sewer and water, communication between WSSC and other utilities, communication between WSSC and the jurisdictions where they're doing work. It's communication about, they do the work and then they're supposed to do the restoration later, and those two are not communicating. So it's not just us. This has felt difficult and murky, and it turns out
There's a reason
there's
for
a
it.
reason.
Yeah, huh.
But I
It's not
think
blocked, the United Bank, not this.
Well, it sounds like the post office.
a little bit, but
Yeah, post office, that's a good point.
Yeah.
But I think that what we're gonna have to decide is this. We either have, for the south end, this is what we have, definitely the choice before us. Do we have WSSC repave it when they're done? Or do we repave it and have them reimburse us?
Yeah, that's been the question.
What are you gonna do at the north end?
Well, we may possibly be constrained by the letter already signed by Gene back in 2012 about that. In which case, we have to do it and they'll reimburse us.
Yeah.
But as I read that letter, there's still potentially wiggle room.
Well,
And they're trying to figure out what they did or didn't do.
Well, the issue in the past has been that we didn't trust the WSSC contractors in their repayment, the quality of the work. And it was felt that we get the money, we control the quality. So I don't know if that's still an issue. Considering what you're saying about them, I don't know if I would trust them to do the paving.
Well, can we discussed this week, like to figure out, he should have it researched and have an answer.
And see how much money we
get. By whenever you meet with him, so that we can say, okay, if that's agreeable for the north end.
If they do 100% of the repaving of street, it costs us nothing.
Yeah.
If we do the repaving, it may cost us more. It depends what the unit costs are. I mean, their unit costs are fixed. They already got a contract for repaving for a particular, that's under one unit cost. The south end may be on a different unit cost, but that's fixed. The debate is, what is the limits of construction? What portion of a street will they replace? If they're gonna replace a whole street, gutter to gutter, it costs us nothing. If we do it, it costs us
whatever percentage.
whatever, right, and they were gonna reimburse us for some square footage of that.
Yeah,
In addition, we may have costs like, are we gonna hire an inspector? This is like what Bob Wiesner has done, is he hires an inspector to come in and literally stick a thermometer in the asphalt and say, no, this asphalt is too cold, you may not lay it today, send it back. And he said, in his opinion, it's money well spent because you get a better product, but that's a lot more work.
Yeah.
And cost by us.
Have you talked to, what's his name, Sellover, the guy from Maryland?
Oh, Ed Stelfox.
Stelfox.
Yeah, he's retired, but like apparently he wants to come here, and we've been trading emails about
Okay,
when
because
that
these
will
would be good questions for him to get his advice on this.
Yeah.
Very knowledgeable.
Just, I wanna make sure, the street repaving is one piece, but a lot of the fixes that were discussed above earlier, pricing is important, and to me, $9,600 comes under our threshold as established in our charter, but it meets what we discussed our policy as being significant, so I think we need to, as
It's
you get
definitely,
that thing
it's going to be less than that because that included the Brookville Road items, but it's definitely gonna be
significant.
at least 8,000, I think that's safe to
I
say.
think that's, we need to decide whether or not we're gonna bid that specific work or not. Because we don't have to, but it is something that we've discussed and we've, put in our policy that even if it doesn't meet the $10,000 threshold, that if it's significant work and the council.
That's up to you, I mean,
Does Pavement Corporation do the same thing?
They will do what Chamberlain Construction does.
Yeah, so they could both bid on the same
I mean, I am getting 2 estimates.
Right.
It's
Okay.
just not officially an RFP, but
Right.
yes, I'm definitely getting 2 estimates. And then, for the tripping hazards, there's a third category, which is, when a sidewalk lifts up, it becomes a tripping hazard. Why is that happening? A lot of times it's because a tree root has come underneath. To really fix it properly, you need to cut the tree root at the edge and replace that square. But you can grind it down.
Right.
Grinding it down is definitely cheaper.
Right.
But you've thinned the concrete now, and it's more subject to cracking. So,
Well, but
what's the right answer? I don't know.
Well, depends on whether it's like this or like this.
It seems like that one
Yeah.
is up like this, and Melville, I mean, that one looks like a replacement to me. I mean, that you need to saw the tree root off and redo it.
Well, I haven't seen that on Melville.
It's painted pink.
It's right outside
Oh,
of Millie
paint.
Schott's house.
Oh, what'd you say?
Just outside of Millie Schott's,
Oh.
right in front of her.
Okay.
As you make your right, halfway down
sidewalk.
the left.
Okay. I guess I walk in the street there. Okay.
Okay, so we need the revised estimates from Chamberlain Pavement and Pavement Corporation. We need to follow up with Pepco on their schedule to repair the light pole damage. We need to coordinate with State Highway about fixing sidewalk repairs along Brookville, because Chamberlain's not even sure he can do it. We need to do the comprehensive walkthrough with Ed Stelfox. We need to determine how much asphalt repaving will be done by WSSC. We need to establish a long-term plan for pavement maintenance.
And the people, who repaved Raymond Street, was that the gas or WSSC?
I think it was WSSC.
Because,
And
okay,
you understand they're about to dig up their own repaving.
right.
Yeah. And apparently WSSC guy, who's Dwayne Green, called up the repaving department, was like, don't do it, I see what you're about, we're about to dig it up, and they did it anyway. Fine. Leaf bags were delivered to 271 residences in October. We have additional bags in storage, which we can either use next year or use they most likely will be used up during the year though. I did notice that some people have been bringing their leaves to the curb. We've had to remind a few people. I think their contractors don't realize what our rule is. They think we're county.
It's on them to remind
I
their
know.
contractors. They need to-
Next bulk trash is January 9th. Pet waste bags. Beth Boa contacted Friendship Animal Hospital, which has agreed to continue donating bags to the village. And thank you to Dennis King for alerting us that this was even a possibility, because we didn't know that. Okay, newsletter. Now that we have Beth here,
The owners of the hospital live in the village, that's probably why.
yes, I don't know who they are.
They're right behind us.
Okay. We can realistically plan to publish a monthly newsletter now.
Good.
We have been publishing.
Yeah, for 2 months.
For 2 months.
That's monthly.
The office has a list of hard copy recipients, which we used in October. These, how many people? 18?
Yeah, about 18.
Move-ins, move-outs.
Can we just do move-ins?
Yeah.
Do we still have the welcome committee? Or is
Needs
that
to be
in
revived,
abeyance?
but Tori
Okay.
and I have discussed using the move-in, move-out information is probably one of the best ways to.
Yeah.
14, the bottom line is 14 homes changed occupants
Yeah.
since June.
That's pretty amazing.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
School year.
Halloween
Yeah.
party happened. Doug Lemeyer's report is attached. I don't think there's anything
Okay.
surprising there.
Good job.
Okay.
What's that?
Halloween party was great.
Oh, good.
Hey,
I'm glad.
good. We're at the end of the book.
We are.
So, any resident comments? We wore them down again. I guess a motion to adjourn.
I will move to adjourn.
I second that.